Right, hit record again. Hope for the best on this, although it's probably going to sound like shit, and I am so sorry about this chat, but for some reason, Streamlabs and Road Unify and everything on my end just decided to fuck up at the last minute, and so here we are.
Well, we're here.
Well, barely. That much can be said. Anyways, welcome in, everyone. Sorry about all that. Being the perfectionist I am going to internalize this and beat myself up over this for the next 6 months and probably try to drink my misery away. I'm Lord Rexworth. This is ElijahKnightly.
Hello.
And we are going to try and talk about a bit of word salad in modernity is how I can best think to sum this all up.
Mm-hmm.
So, Elijah, why don't you go ahead and start? Introduce yourself, please.
Greetings and salutations. It is I, ElijahKnightly, noble warrior from the bleak decadent future, here to fight for truth and honor in this doomed world. And in this case, we're fighting for truth and honor by talking about politics.
Yes.
What started this was me learning that CBS was pressured to release the unedited 60 Minutes interview that they did with Kamala Harris. But it's kind of expanded since then, and we're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff too. Since we did the election, since we covered the election, I've enjoyed talking politics on stream more and more.
Yeah. I've sort of made it a thing now that and the climate has changed to where I think it's safer for us now to actually openly talk about those sorts of things. But not only that, it's better that we do talk about these things, and also, just speaking as a content creator, the market is largely untapped for this. There's not a whole lot of people doing what we're doing. I mean, you've got big names like Kirscher and Leaflet and, to a certain extent, Smugglana, but and Nuxtaku on occasion. But I mean, it's not anything you're seeing with, I guess you could call us up and coming independent talents.
So, I guess let's. Well, I shouldn't be taking the lead. This is your stream. But,
no, please feel free.
I had the thought. Why don't we each just kind of say how what we've thought of and how we felt about everything that's happened since the inauguration. That we streamed our reaction to. That was the last time we talked politics, and how has the flurry of activity since then made you feel?
That's exactly what it's been. Has been a flurry, and it's been a struggle to keep up.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can think of, is that so much has happened that it's such a whirlwind that by the time we actually get around to talking about things, it seems as though so much of it has gone stale, and we're moving on to the next thing. So, they weren't kidding when they were talking about a blitzkrieg approach to all of this, and that's exactly what's happened. And we have had to, all of us, I think, have had to up our game and do a better job of staying on top of things.
Yeah, and it's cool that that's happened. Trump during his first term, I mentioned this a bit during the inauguration, but I think he was more optimistic, a bit more naive even. Like, he thought, okay, I won, which means I get to do what the president does, and they'll play ball with me. He did not realize that everyone who tried to stop him from winning would continue to stand in his way.
Oh, yes.
But he almost kind of needed those 4 years in office and 4 years continuing to be persecuted out of office to come back more, better prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's not holding back this time. And
No.
obviously the biggest and most active component of his administration so far, the biggest and most active wing of his administration so far, has been the new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, which I gotta say, base name.
And
when I first heard what they were gonna do, I was like, I feel a bit guilty because it does come across as, naked partisanship. Like, we're just going to get rid of civil servants who stand in the way of our agenda. But I felt less guilty about it. One, because it's like, okay, that's what they did to us.
Yes.
But on top
they
of that,
opened the door to all of this.
On top of that, it is still living up to its name, Department of Government Efficiency. Particularly when they froze USAID, and I think they've already fired over 10,000 USAID employees, and they basically audited them and looked at like all the money they were sending to different places, and it's like, wow, yeah, this was really inefficient. These people did need to be fired, and the fact that they were almost all exclusively, progressive left-wingers is just a bonus.
All of them progressive left-wingers, all of them engaging in propaganda efforts both at home and abroad, and propagating a lot of wasteful spending on rather stupid programs that in the end is just propagation of more gay race communism.
Yeah, and it's like once, it did kind of seem strange, like, wow, why is it that like so much left-wing activism and so much left-wing journalism just seems to have come onto the scene so recently, like particularly within the last 10 years. Like, where did it all come from and why? Well, it turns out it was just being astroturfed by USAID, both in America and around the world. And now that they've done what they've done, and frankly, I hope they dismantle the whole department. I thought of an apropos metaphor for it. Basically, they have identified the octopus and removed its brain. The tentacles are still going to move for a while, but it's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole global progressive apparatus is it's stumbling now. It's
been starved of its food source and oxygen in the form of money.
It might actually have to see how well it does in the free market. And in that, I wish them luck because they'll need it.
Yeah. I mean, just daylight really is proving to be one of the best forms of disinfectant against all of this.
Yeah.
And
in fact, I kind of wanted to just look up a list of the weirdest things USAID was sending money to.
Sure.
The one that always comes to mind is that they were, they were sending money. They were giving money for, I think it was $7 million for condoms to be sent to Gaza. And when I first heard that, I was like, did they need to say Ghana? Because that would make a bit more sense. And it was
turns
like,
out they were,
Gaza.
I think, sending them over to somewhere in Mozambique or somewhere in Africa.
No, they were also sending them to Gaza.
Were they really?
And it's like, do they know that like those people generally don't use condoms?
No.
And I genuinely think that, it's what they call intersectionalism. This was literally just an intersection of two things that the left cares about: Arabs and safe sex. And they're just like, well, let's just put the two together. It surely will work. Well, no, Hamas was using well, I can tell you exactly what could go wrong. Hamas was using the condoms as balloons to deliver bombs.
Doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just click the first search result on Google. Let's see. $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. Did they forget that diversity, equity, and inclusion didn't really work in Yugoslavia? It didn't really work.
No, not really.
$70,000 for production of a DEI musical in Ireland. 2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam, for 47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, 32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru, $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. Okay, so now we're just helping them with tourism. Hundreds of thousands for a nonprofit linked to designated terrorist organizations. Millions to EcoHealth Alliance, which was involved in research at the Wuhan lab. Oh, we're not allowed to talk about that one.
Actually, I think we can now.
Yeah, they did basically verify that most likely is where it came from.
Yeah. And
but remember when they literally just said, no, it did not come from a lab, and anyone saying it came from a lab
they locked us
lying.
down over a bioweapon that got out of one of their own labs that we funded with our own tax money, and they locked down the world, put everybody in an open world prison, and used that as a pretense to get rid of Orange Man Bad.
Yeah. I genuinely think that it wasn't just cynical political maneuvering on their part. One, I think that civil servants, particularly, who are again almost exclusively left-leaning, genuinely enjoyed depriving people of their freedoms. And two, it made them feel like heroes. Like they thought they were living in they thought they were living in World War Z. Like, yes, the global scientific consensus is going to save the world.
Yeah, the I fucking love science crowd.
Yeah, exactly. Hundreds of thousands of meals that went to an Al-Qaeda-affiliated fighters in Syria. Funding to print personalized contraceptive birth control devices in developing countries. And hundreds of millions to fund irrigation canals, farming equipment, and fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan, benefiting the Taliban. And you better believe that heroin ended up back here in America.
Oh, yes.
And that's just the first list I found on Google.
That's only a small sampling. I mean, in recent weeks, we found out that so-called journalist outfits were being funded. I think the BBC was getting about 10% of their budget, roughly, from USAID. They were also paying a lot of the Gamergate journalists.
Yes, I was going to say a lot of gaming publications, like Polygon, were taking money from USAID.
Mm-hmm.
It always goes back to Gamergate.
Yeah, it really does. And these were the same people who were gaslighting and trying to destroy anyone who said that, games journalism is dirty and corrupt and is not impartial, and in fact they hate the very people that they're supposed to report for.
And Zoe Quinn did in fact have sex with critics for good reviews.
Yes.
Which is literally how it all started.
Yeah, that's how it all started. It all started with that, and just a lot of good lads out there that just wanted to play video games.
Yeah. But you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to be normal.
No, it was effectively that stick figure meme of one of them shouting, "Stop having fun."
Yeah. The other thing, again, like just talking about like international financial interests and how that's the real motive behind all this like virtue signaling shit, like specifically the opioid trade with Afghanistan is what made me think of this. I remember learning recently, like I always kind of understood that the reason so many people in America were on the side of Ukraine in the Ukraine-Russia war was they would never put it this way themselves, but what kind of lay behind it was the hope that Ukraine would become like America if we helped them. Essentially, that we could make it into an American satellite state, as opposed to Russia making it a Russian satellite state. And part of me wanted to say, frankly, I don't give a damn about the Ukraine.
Yeah, it's not a fight, not a problem.
Yeah, and like, yeah, it would be a shame if they became a Russian satellite state, but you know, if to a certain extent, you know, yeah, America still is kind of the world hegemon, as it were, and so sometimes it is in our best interest to militarily aid certain countries against other countries that are rivals to the U.S. But if we're not really doing it in a way that suits Americans, like, I don't know, because the whole thing just felt so Orwellian and forced. Like, this doesn't feel like
risk global thermonuclear conflict, like what we came to the brink of having had happen so many times.
No, literally, after Biden lost the election, he said, "Okay, I'm authorizing the use of nuclear weapons." Like, it's like he just wanted to do as much damage as he could before he ran out of time.
He was absolutely insane.
Yeah,
and that wasn't the only time. I mean, you had Russian and Ukrainian troops getting into a firefight at the Chernobyl nuclear site.
Yeah.
I mean, it was peak insanity. I saw the headlines of that stuff, and I'm just like, what the fuck are you people thinking?
Yeah.
You are walking into a literal powder keg, and you all have lit cigars.
The other thing was that and I've noticed that so many people, I think the left tends to do this more, but the right does it too sometimes, which is I want to say, like, the presumption of moral purity. You know, people you like are perfectly good, and people you don't like are perfectly evil. Like, they won't acknowledge anything good about someone or something they don't like, and then won't acknowledge anything bad about someone or something they like, which is why we weren't allowed to talk about the fact that, yes, it is true, there are Nazis in the Ukraine, and they do serve in the Ukrainian army.
Yes.
But anyway, the other reason we were supporting the Ukraine in the war is because the tech industry is very dependent on the import of raw minerals, and we get most of our raw minerals from the Ukraine. So at the end of the day, it was just about money.
In the end, yeah.
Which is also why I really hope that Trump is serious about trying to buy Greenland from Denmark. One, it would just be kind of based, but two, Greenland also exports lots of raw minerals, and so if we could make Greenland part of America, we could import them way cheaper, of course, and become, you know, less, and our financial interests would be less wrapped up in other countries. I also think that, you know, annexing Greenland or doing anything like that would just reshape what America literally is in terms of, like, geography or government or anything like that. It's just, I feel like history has kind of stagnated, if that makes sense. Like, you know, Alaska and Hawaii became states in 1959, and no new states have been added since
it's
then.
all stagnated.
Well, and I'm specifically reminded, I want to look up who this guy was. He was a Japanese philosopher. Here we go. Francis Fukuyama. When the Cold War ended, when the Berlin Wall came down, he said, "We have reached the end of history." And he wrote a book about it called The End of History and the Last Man. Like, we literally thought that we had, like, created the global liberal utopia, and that nothing was ever going to change again because it was perfect now, and so any change would be for the worse. Well, then 9/11 happened, and we got a bit of a wake-up call.
And then everything changed for the worse.
Yeah. But, you know, it's saying, like, we've reached the end of history, like, everything's perfect now, it's so presumptuous, like, this kind of utopian thinking, like, the assumption that you have the wisdom to create a perfect world. Which is, and I think utopian thinking is the kind of the main thing that all the different left-wing ideologies have in common. And I think utopian thinking, at least in America, was kind of started by the Puritans when they first settled in New England. they were very utopian. They believed that they could and should create a perfect society, which is why they were constantly accusing the neighbors of being witches.
Utopian thinking, to be fair, has existed long before they came around, and continue to persist even afterwards.
Of course, I just think that is what kind of planted the seed in America, because New England culture. To be fair, mainstream American culture for a long time was more shaped by the culture of what is now called the Rust Belt, which was settled by Quakers who were all about personal freedom. So that's why you have the idea that freedom is very much an American value. And then you had New England culture, which is more, like I said, utopian. They were always coming up with bright ideas on how to change the world for the better, like prohibition, for example. And New Englanders also settled the West Coast, which is where California gets its culture, and it's why people in the Northeast seem to have the same values as the Pacific Coast. And basically, the basic pattern of American history is New England comes up with a bright idea, the South resists for better or for worse, and then the rest of the country decides who's right. The two big examples are slavery, in which case, the South was wrong, and prohibition, in which case, the Southern bootleggers who resisted prohibition were right.
Yes.
Anyway, I think utopian ideology. It's the big problem with politics these days, and no one's willing to accept reality with all its flaws and try to adapt to it. Everyone chooses to remain committed to their ideology and ignore when reality disproves it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they say things like facts can be racist.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was going to say is it feels like history is stagnated, and I feel like something like adding a new state to America would just kind of give us a shot in the arm. Oh yeah, the other obviously the more obvious reason why Trump would want to add Greenland to the United States is for better or for worse a lot of polar ice is melting, and it's causing new Arctic shipping routes to open up, and if we don't get control of them, Russia or China will.
That's fair.
I've talked a lot. You say something.
No, it's all good stuff. I don't know. I'd like to think that it's still a negotiating tactic in the end.
Greenland?
I still don't know if anyone's serious about annexing them, making them a 51st state, doing the same with Canada. It's like, why inherit their problems and all of their liabilities? It would be much easier than to just have the oil, gas, and rare earth minerals leases. Some sort of agreement worked out between both countries, which ultimately that may be what they end up settling for. It's sort of almost like a Russian highball approach in negotiations. Something the Soviet Union used to do constantly, where they would just come in and make these just outrageous demands, and
you
sort of
demand
set the
more
temperature
than what
and
you
tone.
actually want, and then you allow them to talk you down.
Yeah, and they were fully prepared to take a more reasonable position, but there were so many of the so-called wizards of smart that were dumb enough to believe them.
Yeah.
And so quite often they're like, we can't believe our good fortune here. These Western capitalist pigs, they ended up giving us everything we wanted and then some.
Yeah. But anyway, I could see why, because the thing is, I think there are a lot of people in Canada who, if you offered to make them American, they would take you up on it. Because there are just so many Canadians these days who absolutely hate their government.
No, yes.
Particularly in the Plains provinces, which have a lot in common with the American Midwest. They just kind of feel neglected in the same way because they're not on the coast. I think the Plains provinces and the Maritime provinces would be more likely to want to be annexed. Maybe not so much. The Maritime provinces maybe less because they tend to lean really hard left.
Yeah, I was actually watching, I think, Side Scrollers earlier today, and trying to... I don't think they posted it yet, but yeah, they had somebody on who lived in Canada, and that was one thing that they were lamenting, is that it's just like they hated being Canadian, wished that they could live in America, and they're just like, it's so awful here. And I was even watching a Nuxtaku video. I believe he is dual national Canadian and American, or he's lived in both Canada and the United States. And even he was saying, yeah, it's not as great as some people like to gaslight and make it out to be up in Canada. The taxes are high. Everybody wants to bang on about the free healthcare, which is not actually free. It's paid for with Canadian tax money. Yeah. And the system as it stands right now, it's like, if you're dying of, some form of cancer, you can get some sort of scan or something, but you're going to have to wait at least 6 months and you could be dead by then. But as an alternative, they'll offer you physician-assisted suicide, and they push the hell out of that. As we've seen in recent, like there was a trigonometry interview that was done, and trying to think who it was that of course, now I think of all this, I can't look it up fast enough. Oh, who was it? Kelsey Shedden. Talking about what's going on over there, and just some of the really fucked up shit that's going on with physician-assisted suicide in Canada. And the thumbnail for the video portion of the interview sums it up quite perfectly. Where she's just like, this is a eugenics program where they're just taking everyone who is sick or even, slightly depressed or something like that, and they're just killing them. They're just killing them all off because it's the more expedient thing to do in their system and saves the most money, and also happens to be enough perverse incentives in the system right now to where it literally pays doctors more to push assisted suicide.
Yeah. And when you're completely secularized and you no longer believe in the inherent spiritual value of human life, why not just use death as a solution to your problems?
Absolutely. That's where all roads eventually end. Yeah. Is with the culture of death. And they can't really have any pushback because, unlike in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, other Commonwealth countries, they don't really have this rich history of freedom of speech like we have here in the US, to where you can't really talk about these sorts of things lest you get a visit from the police, possibly get jailed or thrown in prison, subject to fines. Even ordained ministers, preachers, they are very tightly controlled and regulated as far as what they can say on the pulpit in their own churches. When this is supposed to be a free society somehow, it's like, no, it's not. Is it any wonder now why we're not just seeing an increase in Americans, in United States citizens renouncing their citizenship. You're also seeing a growing number of Canadians wanting to renounce their citizenship and go somewhere else.
Yeah. Talking about the eventual, what would you call it, the logical conclusion being a culture of death. It kind of reminded me what I wanted to say before about the problem with modernity. And the article you sent me before actually put it into really good words. If I can look it up real quick.
Oh yes. Why don't I pull up the switch over my scene here?
Tribunal over liberalism.
Yes. No, that was something that came out earlier today.
Yeah, well, that article basically says what no one has the balls to say, which is that World War II and history since then has really been a three-way battle between liberalism, fascism, and communism. And frankly, I'm not a fan of any of them.
No. No, this is from someone who knows a thing or two about persecution, especially by so-called Western liberals. Those of you who have heard of the fourth political theory, you may be familiar with Alexander Dugin. He is oftentimes cast as this Joseph Goebbels of the hard right in the modern era. He's nothing of the kind. He's sometimes thought of as Vladimir Putin's brain trust. As far as we know, Dugin and Putin have not spoken for years. No, this is, if anything, he is... I would say a more apt description of Dugin these days would be a persecuted intellectual and persecuted modern philosopher who has stood up for what he believed in and paid the ultimate price with his own daughter being assassinated by what can only be what many believe to be Western intelligence agencies that planted a bomb in her car. A bomb that was actually meant for, it is believed that was meant for Alexander Dugin.
Yeah. Man. So that subtitled "The Fourth Political Theory Rises." So I know that Nazis and Italian fascists often refer to their respective ideologies as the third position, between liberalism and Marxism. So is that what this is? The fourth political theory would be like an alternative to the three?
Yeah, the idea being moving on from that sort of thing and trying to break out of the old paradigm. I've got the article here, and we can read it for chat. In an instant following Trump's rapid reforms, where he declared that there are only two genders, male and female, a monstrous picture unfolded before the eyes of Americans and the entire world. Millions of those who had been convinced by the previously ruling liberals to change their gender and identify as non-existent genders suddenly found themselves transformed from progressive, forward-thinking citizens into cripples, invalids, just moments before they had been inculcated with the idea that gender diversification, including castration, mutilation, and the psychological breakdown of young children, were signs of the most adequate social behavior. Stoner Stone,
should I take a turn? Should I read the next paragraph?
Yeah, if you want.
Okay. Now, it turned out that those who insisted on this were simply maniacs and criminals, and those who succumbed were victims who had voluntarily agreed to become freaks. Liberals had almost pushed their societies into the abyss, telling them soothing fairy tales, but Trump suddenly revealed that this was indeed the case. The abyss had opened, and many had already fallen into it. Many had managed to physically, mentally, and socially ruin their children, losing them forever. Even Elon Musk suffered from this, his child turning into an imbecile.
They will never recover from this. What the liberals did was a giant social experiment, more terrifying than Nazism and communism. And this was not just a gang of maniacs, perverts, pedophiles, and schizophrenics. It was an entire...
They were all that.
Yeah, no, this is true, real. It was an
They were all
entire
that and more.
Yes, it was an entire ideology that took out its main principle to absurdity, the pursuit of individualism to the point of liberation from all forms of collective identity, estate, nationhood, faith, ethnos, gender, and finally species.
Now, before we continue, that was what really stuck with me the most, the pursuit of individualism.
Atomized individualism is probably a good term for that.
Because, in a way, yeah, liberalism, communism, and Nazism all kind of lean into those, but in different ways. They still emphasized a kind of togetherness, just of a different kind. With the Nazis, it revolved around race.
Mm-hmm.
We need to unite the good race and destroy the bad ones. With communists, it's class. We need to unite the good class and destroy the bad ones. And with liberals, it's ideology. We need to unite people with the right beliefs and destroy people who have the wrong beliefs. But all three of them kind of deconstruct more natural modes of social organization, particularly family and nation, which we know, like everyone just kind of knows deep down are real, but we all have to pretend that they're not real to make ourselves feel smart. Now, of course, race is also real, but the Nazis had a weird mythical conception of race not based on reality at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that it's based on is the ideology of rationalism, which is the belief that the rational human mind is the purest thing there is. Basically, it's the best thing there is, and so in order to become a better person, you need to free your mind from external influences so that it can be more rational. And that means dissociating from normal social behavior that can make you more biased toward your in-group than toward an out-group. And you need to be unemotional and unsympathetic, and you need to be cold and calculating. And it's also just based on the lie that the human mind is rational. I mean, at the end of the day, your mind is just your brain. It's just a function of your brain, and your brain is part of your body. So your mind is inherently affected by external factors, biological functions.
Yes.
What you eat affects your mood.
Yes. We've got chemicals coursing through our brains that influence mood and behavior. And to sort of pull a phrase from Scott Adams, we could be likened to almost like moist robots.
Yeah. And
there's a dragon, Wolf. Welcome in.
How's it going, Wolf? And so at the end of the day, these left-wing ideologies are based on a rejection of reality. They are fundamentally untrue. And they force us to reject our nature, and it makes us unhappy. The most, when you see, like you remember when that photo kind of went viral of people partying after the Trump inauguration? Those very happy, good-looking young people.
Yes.
And people tried to paint it as a bad thing.
Yes.
And in particular, they cropped the photo to remove any black people in the party to make it look racist.
Yeah, which the full image showed that it was actually a rather diverse pastiche of Americans from all walks of life.
Yeah, but what I mainly saw from this is that these people look happy. They're not in the streets screeching their discontent.
It is like that meme of the stick figure shouting, "Quit having fun."
Yeah, and so you can't help but think that those people are just more in tune with their nature as human beings.
Well, and a lot of them probably, as Scripture says, they trust in the Lord their God and lean not on their own understanding.
Yeah, they're in step with the Spirit, as it were.
Yes.
And they and also, for a long time, communists would push the lie. They just made it up because it made them feel correct. They made up the lie that prehistoric humans must have been communists. They must have lived in propertyless, familyless communes. But
they were
paleontology
tribalists,
reveals
perhaps.
that human beings have always lived with their families.
Yeah.
We are naturally, and if you just look at apes, apes live with their families, and they're never really alone. Apes are always with other apes. Anyway, I guess let's continue.
Yeah.
We discussed this with Tucker Carlson. He was horrified by everything happening in the West. And now Tucker Carlson is in the White House, and Trump has abruptly stopped the psychophysical genocide of the American people. How do transgender people, drag queens, body positivity activists, advocates, militants, castrates, and quad robbers feel now? Especially transgender children, who instantly went from being advanced representatives of woke culture to being considered trash and victims of inhumane perversion.
Which, to be fair, I don't think it's... It might be a bit of an exaggeration to say that detractors of the so-called advanced representatives of woke culture refer to these people as trash.
No.
But certainly, they are indeed victims of an inhumane perversion.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They're so they've been so locked into this way of thinking for so long that seeing it being rejected so publicly like this is bound to make them feel bad. Yeah, like they might say it makes them feel like trash, and for that I sympathize with them.
It's probably causing an identity crisis in many.
Yeah, no, like,
and forcing them to do some soul searching.
Yeah, I said this during the election, that basically what has happened is that the false premises of the left have come crashing finally into reality.
Yes, and so much of them, as we've seen with the freezing of foreign aid, with the closing down or dramatic downsizing of US aid, so much of it was just a gigantic psyop, or even as some people would call it, a gay-op.
Yeah, it was never popular to begin with.
It was all that an astroturfed movement just pumped full of laundered money from the US taxpayer.
And I must say that's something I'm looking forward to. Lower taxes.
Yeah.
Like, finally, we a politician promises lower taxes, and we might actually get it with all the downsides.
And not only lower taxes, but spending cuts as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because the last time that we got any sort of tax cut, we didn't get any spending cuts, which results in budget deficits.
Yeah.
To have something that is truly an effective tax cut, you also have to cut the budget as well in order to keep things balanced. And so now it seems we stand a fighting chance to get both of those, not just tax cuts, but possibly even, if not a balanced budget, more balanced than it was before.
Yeah. The one other thing I was going to say is that people who feel this way, and you see this for example, like since the inauguration, Reddit has basically become all the more even more language police than it was before. I want to say 75% of subreddits have made it part of their, I guess you could call it their constitution. You're not allowed to talk about Trump on this subreddit.
Unless it is talking about threatening Trump and Trump supporters with physical violence of some kind. Which
and the reason
we've got
for that
the receipts on that.
The reason for it is basically just that Reddit and communities like it were just an echo chamber. They don't know how to think any other way. And so when they see it fail, all they know how to do is fight even harder. They don't know how to reassess what they've been doing and ask if it was maybe wrong. And also I think that a lot of people on the left lack theory of mind, if you know what that is. It's the ability to recognize that other people have thoughts of their own and are different from you, and to learn to appreciate that another person's thoughts are all their own.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, you mean they lack agency? Well, yes, we knew that already.
not quite. It's no,
I know. I'm
so
poking fun.
Yeah. So I guess the best way of putting it is feminists say that they are fighting against misogyny, and in their hearts they believe that, but they don't understand that a perspective other than their own exists. So when they see someone who is resistant to feminism, they assume that that person must be a misogynist and must know that he is a misogynist and be proud that he is a misogynist, because they don't know how that person could think any other way. And that's also just a product of keeping yourself in an ideological echo chamber.
Yeah.
Anyway,
they also don't seem to realize that feminism is just another one of those CIA psyops invented in the 1970s to just, to turn men and women against each other, and also try and get more people in the workforce, and then just destabilize society and also make everything more expensive. Sex Freakman, thank you for the follow. What a name.
So how can they study, live, build families when the new healthy generation of the Trump era, where there are only two genders, will see them as biological waste, psychological and physical degenerates? I wonder where he's getting these quotations from.
I don't, nobody is going to be looking at them as biological waste. I reject that premise outright. These are still human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, of course. Again, if you want, if you're one of those people who is cold and unsympathetic, then your robot brain will basically be like, well, they aren't bound to reproduce, so they might as well be, it's just like they're a biological dead end. Well,
you're always going to have screwballs like that will say and think such things, and there's really not much you can do for people like that.
We need to treat them with sympathy,
yes.
Even though they would never do that for us. But we need to particularly be sympathetic to them if they are mature enough and intelligent enough to understand that they were tricked and they were used. Essentially, we need to
if anything, I think that's how we both are looking at these, so-called vanguards of woke culture. If anything, we pity them.
Yeah, and the ones that come around really do deserve to be regarded as victims of, what did it say, inhumane perversion. They were horribly mistreated.
Yes.
They just didn't know it. And the other part was when they say, how can they study, live, build families? Well, I feel like if Kamala had won and peak woke had reached even greater heights, they wouldn't have lived and built families anyway. That's against their beliefs.
There's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of path. But understatement of the century. Welcome in, Rosso. Good evening. Good evening, Freakman. Welcome in. All
right, go ahead.
It's time to compile the Black Book of Liberalism, because it's all about ideology. Liberalism should be recognized as a criminal and extremist ideology. It is responsible for terror, wars, coups, genocide, the orchestrated lies of international media, for color revolutions, murders, and most monstrously for the mass violence and psychological breakdown of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of children receiving incurable trauma to both body and mind. Liberals have mutilated the souls and bodies of countless of their own citizens, and what the elites did to unprotected migrant children is beyond imagination. Now, the truth about the pedophilic orgies of the top of the U.S. Democratic Party is slowly coming to light, about the closed satanic rituals on Epstein's Island and P. Diddy's parties, where many participated. Soon all the details will be known, and America will shudder, as will all of humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not just talking about, the past 4 or 5 years. He's talking about what we've seen across the post-Cold War era, the post-Soviet era, of everything that went on, not just in the early 2020s, but also the 2010s, the 2000s, even into the 90s.
Yeah.
Terrorism, wars, coups, all of this going on since at least the mid-1990s.
Yeah, and if you look even further back in history, you can kind of see signs that stuff like this was always going to happen. Because if you look at Weimar Germany, you could say that public support for the Nazi Party was largely an overcorrection for the moral decay of Weimar Germany, because they were known for things like widespread drug abuse and orgies and the genesis of the nudist movement.
Also the genesis of the transgender movement.
Yeah, and so World War II basically just kind of put a hold on that for a few decades, but then it ended up happening anyway.
Yeah. So much of it coming out of the Frankfurt School, and all these organizations that popped up and thrived in Weimar Germany. And just all continued on, and they just shifted things around and moved from Germany to the United States and to other Western powers, and their mission continued.
Yeah. All right. Can you scroll it down some?
Oh, yes, of course.
All three Western political ideologies of the modernity turned out to be criminal, ultimately leading to a bloody nightmare. Communists destroyed entire classes, the aristocracy, peasantry, slaughtered believers, cursed national identity and ancient traditions, all in the name of progress, and it all ended in sad degeneration and collapse. Yes, this was a Western ideology that naive Russian people fell for. The Black Book of Communism exists. And I have to say, I think it's mainly because we just don't talk about it enough. The Soviets were just as evil as the Nazis, just in different ways.
Over
and I feel like it's
million
because
people slaughtered under communism across the Soviet Union, China, everywhere.
Yeah, and I think it's because we treat racism so seriously in America because we do have a history of it. And, unfortunately, that obsession with racism has kind of hopped across the pond to European countries that don't have a history of it. But it's because of that, I think Americans tend to see the harming of an out group as worse than the harming of an in group. So the fact that the Soviets killed 100 million of their own people is considered, not as bad as the Nazis killing 12 million non-Germans.
I would say what we have termed racism is really just in-group preference. And that is what Western intelligentsia and so-called thought leaders have been at war with and have tried to destroy.
Yeah, and is it any surprise that left-wing ideologies tend to be so overly intellectual, and the group that they promise the most to is the intellectual class because it's the professors who peddle them.
Mm.
And the other thing I was going to say is so it's I think it's partly because we don't talk about the Soviet evils enough that it is so particularly sad to me. The first thing that always comes to mind, even more than putting people in gulags, was the horrific execution of the Tsar and his family.
Yes.
Even the children, the little children, and for what? So you could stand in line for a loaf of bread.
Yeah. No, it was brutal, horrific murder of the House of Romanov. And if you've seen even dramatic depictions of it, which I think probably the most accurate depiction of what happened was, I believe it was in the Netflix series The Crown, that was probably one of the most brutal and accurate depictions of it. It's like emotionally you come away from that and it's just like, wow, these communists are absolute fucking ghouls. I hate them with every fiber of my being.
Yeah, not only did they shoot and kill the family, including the little children, they then stripped them of their valuables, melted the bodies with acid, and threw them down a mine shaft.
Yeah, it was a horrible end, an absolute horrible end, and I think only the most demon-possessed, psychopathic individuals could have done something like that. But then again,
well, yeah, that's a phrase I've come to enjoy using recently. Ideologically possessed.
Yes, no, it's worse than that. That's demonic. That's absolutely demonic. To do something like that. Don't know if it's because of the history as much as the anti-fascism religion we've been under since World War II. Like the history of race relations fits great into that, but that was all addressed differently before the mid-20th century. Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think, particularly because, there well, there were attempts at both a Marxist movement and a fascist movement in America, but the fascist movement just happened to not get as far, probably because the Marxist movement had a head start on them. Like there was a socialist party that came pretty close to winning the presidency in, I think, 1912. But that, there was never a fascist party or a Nazi party in America.
Meanwhile,
and so
in Britain, you had probably the closest thing that they had to a British fascist party. Well, it was the British Union of Fascists.
And then there were even, let's just say it's a very good thing that Edward VIII was not king for long.
Yes, the rumors persist even to this day.
Anyway, but the other thing I was going to say was, yes, so the socialist movement had a big head start in America, and even though they failed to gain real political legitimacy, they then just kind of retreated and hid in academia and slowly spread out their tendrils generation after generation. And
always redirecting the focus towards the evils of Nazism, never really wanting to talk about the evils of communism.
Yeah, and fighting fascism was their main talking point. One, because, fighting fascism is a good thing. And two, because Marxists are particularly obsessed with doing that. I've said this before. The only people that socialists love killing more than honest, decent people is other socialists who are just slightly different from them.
Yes. Talk of which, the horrors committed by the Nazis are known in detail, and the memory of this does not fade or erase, especially since there are still followers in our time. The atrocities of Ukrainian Nazis against civilians. Alas, this is yet another page in the Black Book of Nazism. It remains to condemn and sentence liberalism on a planetary scale. Those who orchestrated all this must face just punishment. And this is the task of all humanity, to stop Western globalism, to defeat this anti-human ideology, policy, and system. But things turned out differently. The system was overthrown from within. The Americans themselves toppled the rabid liberal elite and delivered their judgment. A tribunal is coming. It is inevitable. Trumpists have delivered a crushing blow to the heart of the liberal octopus. U.S. aid, the system that financed global liberalism in all of its dimensions, terror, extremism, corporate media, espionage, coups, assassinations, data falsification, and the persecution of dissenters. In fact, it is USAID that stands behind the formation, funding, and direct political support of Ukrainian Nazism. But this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Scroll down, please. Okay. And here's something important. We must now recognize all three Western ideologies of the modernity as criminal. Otherwise, we will keep wandering in this bad dream, moving from one criminal system to another. Even now, it's not excluded that the West, having recoiled from liberalism and hating communism, might once again be tempted by Nazism in its most unsightly versions. This would restart the vicious cycle. It's crucial that we break the cycle and go beyond it. And it's true, they love to use it against us that, the most radical anti-liberal components of the dissident right today are Nazis.
Indeed,
even though Nazism isn't truly a right-wing ideology, but technically no major political movement in America today is truly right-wing. Those who are, the dissident coalition that is against intersectional progressivism, the worst of them are Nazis. And we really need to nip that in the bud.
Yeah. And
how about
I think that a lot of it might already is in the process of being nipped in the bud anyway, because it's long been suspected that some of the most prominent talking heads of, like, the alt-right, for example, were... I mean, it's been a long history in these sort of American neo-Nazi and neo-fascist movements that so many of their leaders turn out to be glowies, turn out to be fed plants. And there's even at least some circumstantial evidence out there that anyone from Mike Pinovich to Richard Spencer, for example, that they are in fact informants for the FBI or for some other federal alphabet soup agency out there. I mean, you look into Richard Spencer's background, for example, and you will find a lot of establishment and deep state ties.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How about I read half of this next paragraph, and then you read the remainder of the article?
Sure.
All right. The Western modernity is far from the only field of political ideas and theories. I've been saying that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
There is much that non-Western and or non-related to modernity. All this forms the ideational thesaurus of the fourth political theory. Therefore, the tribunal over liberalism and liberals must not throw us back to fascism or communism. All three ideologies are criminal, disastrous, and inhumane. They lack God, Christ, love, soul, and the people as subjects of history. I've noticed that I think the reason why, and I'm sure you've noticed that people on the right tend to enjoy studying history far more than people on the left.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because the more you study history, the more your crackpot theories tend to be disproven. And also, studying history is just studying humanity. It gives you an understanding of human nature, whereas the left tends to prefer to believe that there's no such thing as human nature. So yeah, you go ahead and read the rest.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that so many of these sort of burgeoning movements, especially on the left, but also we notice on the right, especially the further towards the hard right you get, you notice that quality that they lack God, they lack Christ, love, soul, people as subjects of history, but especially lacking in God. They lack the acute experience of authentic being. They lack Dasein, which I have no idea what that means.
I actually just looked it up. It's Dasein. It's German for existence. It's kind of an existential concept.
Oh, I see. All are atheistic, materialistic, and alienated. They were designed to replace religion, an idea already inherently corrupt. This is a perversion, a crime, and the beginning of the end. That's why, by the way, that Trump emphasizes religion so much. Let it be Western Christianity. That's an American affair. We have our own faith, Eastern Orthodox Christianity. It is our way. But we must transcend Western modernity together. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I definitely, I don't know, those sentences definitely ring true because, yeah, so I was like a pseudo-intellectual atheist in my teenage years. And I definitely, I was very much annoyed by the religious and particularly Christian argument that moral ideologies kind of degenerate without religious justification, and it was because I, like many atheists, just didn't get the argument. But history has kind of shown it to be true. If you just take your own goodness for granted, it will deteriorate. If you don't have any kind of calling to pursue your goodness, then you won't.
A moral anchor.
If you assume that you are already good, then you won't try to be good, and you'll end up being bad. As childish an explanation as those exact words may sound, that just speaks to how simple it is and how crazy it is that atheists, like me, formerly, don't get it.
You don't realize your corruptibility, and then before you know it, you are corrupted.
Well, yeah, and I think a big drive for people to become atheists is the resentment of being told that you need help to be your best self.
Or even just being told no.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and honestly, rationalism...
It's like that meme about... that circulates about, well, why do certain feminists take such an issue with Christianity? To which a lot of men chime in and said they were told no by their pastor.
But yeah, what was I going to say?
That's Heideggerian for "you're out of touch, bro."
It was something about not wanting to be told no. Yeah, that's kind of a logical conclusion of rationalism, the ideology I was discussing earlier. If you assume that a person is able to transcend, external influence and become a purely rational mind, then surely all of the desires of that person's mind will be natural and good. So if you're an atheist, then everything you do is good. It's also why I think it also in America and in the West more broadly, it tends to also get fused with the myth of the noble savage. The Western liberals tend to assume that Western culture and Western culture uniquely is a corrupting force on the human mind, and thus liberals have transcended it, but people not from the West never suffered it to begin with, which is why Western liberals are so eager to welcome in millions and millions and millions of migrants from cultures that really don't mix with their own. They think they will because they assume that these migrants are rational.
They don't. I mean, we're seeing it now across Europe, in the United Kingdom, where they're all just becoming insular. They're associated with their own kinds. They are creating enclaves and ghettos of their own, and they're also assembling their own power blocks in some parts of even some parts of the United Kingdom, where you've got these constituencies which are almost exclusively migrants or almost exclusively Pakistani or something like that, and they all vote for each other based on race and culture, and they try to advance their own interest, and often at the expense of native-born Britons.
Yeah, and it has happened to a lesser extent in America. Obviously, America is a big country, so it takes a lot of people to reduce the white majority. But there are places like, are you familiar with Dearborn, Michigan?
Yes.
Yeah, very huge population of Middle Eastern immigrants, and they basically control the municipal government.
Mm-hmm. And ironically enough, I think we have that constituency to thank for Michigan, at least in part, flipping red.
Yeah, no, I think, it was just another example of people saying, I've had enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict that was going on at the time definitely played a hand in all of that as well. Yeah, I mean, you guys basically recognize Somalia as a country in some sense. Wonder who made that a priority. Oh, indeed. Right, last paragraph.
Yeah, go ahead. And then after that, I remembered something else I wanted to say about migration, so maybe that'll be our next topic.
Yeah. We started the war against liberalism in our country and in Ukraine. He's referring to, Dugan's referring to Russia here. But the decisive blow against it was delivered by the Americans themselves. Therefore, it's likely that now the most serious thinkers in the Trumpist camp will turn their gaze towards fourth political theory. The globalists have done everything to prevent this, banning the fourth political theory on their networks, demonizing its supporters, deleting accounts, even killing. But an idea cannot be killed. Thus, the tribunal over liberals must be conducted based on the fourth political theory, beyond the ideologies of Western modernity, any and all.
Yeah, and that kind of pertains to a common mistake that a lot of people on the dissident right do when trying to criticize the left, and that is calling them hypocrites, judging them according to their own standards. One, it automatically puts you on the back foot, and two, it just doesn't work because they have no real standards. They claim to, but they don't really.
No, not really.
Also,
standards and principles are just weapons to be used. They're means to an end.
Yeah. Also, it's interesting that he kept saying the fourth political theory, but he didn't say exactly what the fourth political theory is. And it's probably because it's still an emerging idea that has yet to be concretely defined.
It's been an emerging idea for decades now, and I don't think even he quite knows what it is.
I've used the term earlier of neo-modernism, which seems to be where we're at right now.
Yeah.
The way it's defined is, modernism. We know what modernism is. It's about, progress, etc. And postmodernism is an even more extreme version of that, where the goal is to just deconstruct everything. Well, neo-modernism is basically, it's from what I understand, it's a political and social ideology based on adaptability. The ability to learn from history and willingness to change your institutions and policies, and basically just take the best ideas from history in order to adapt and respond to emerging changes and problems. And so it's based on adaptability and practicality, which is why it's kind of a right-wing ideology. It's more about practicality. And I also, if you let me screen share, I can give you a funny visual metaphor for the four ideologies I'm describing.
Yeah, sure. If not, you can just drop it in. Oh, I see. You need to draw that out. Okay. Hang on.
Yeah, I'm using MS Paint.
Using Microsoft Paint. Okay, lovely.
Like a real man.
We are very professional stream here, everyone. Hang on.
So
let me get that captured here.
Okay.
All right. That is now. Let me fit that to our screen. All right. Have at it.
So basically, you've got pre-modernism represented by this dot, because for thousands of years, nothing changed. People lived according to family and tradition, and they tended to live under, monarchies with strong churches that were very good at maintaining traditional institutions. And that's why I've represented it as a dot. Then you have modernism, which is best represented as a line, because it's the idea that, as history moves forward, we need to become better and better versions of ourselves. Though we struggle to define exactly what that means. And, this is a bit of a joke, but, the funny way to think of postmodernism is this. It just doesn't make sense.
No. It's twisting yourself into intellectual and mental pretzels, and eventually you just deconstruct everything to where it's like it's not even deconstructing, you're just tearing everything down until all you're left is with a giant rubble pile where civilization once stood.
Yeah. And so you may have seen these three images in a meme describing pre-modernism, modernism, and postmodernism. Well, to that I would add that I think the best symbol for neo-modernism is a circle, because it's a line like these. You start at one point and you move, but you kind of return back to the start. You change and you adapt in order to regain stability.
No, return
and
to
I think
principles.
that might be what this fourth political theory that he's talking about is. I've also, just kind of adopted more and more pre-modern sensibilities over the last few years myself. Like, I'm actually not against the idea of a monarchy. I know that that idea is basically, it's basically like apostasy here in America, and it's
much as it once
not going to
was.
happen, and it's not going to happen anytime soon at all.
Well, I mean, as we've discussed before, look at some of the present monarchs that remain in the world. Do you really want to be a subject of any of them?
No.
No, not really.
Which is why I feel like the only way real functional monarchies could arise again is if there was actually some kind of civilizational collapse that brought us back to a point where we were no longer able to argue from the higher rungs on the hierarchy of needs,
Right.
and talk about our values and virtue signal and things like that. If we were really forced back into like survival mode on a civilizational level, then people who were actually good enough to lead would rise to the top.
For the moment, it would seem that the odds of that happening have reduced somewhat. The risk is still there, but...
And to that extent, I imagine that my dabbling in more and more, what's the word? Outlandish ideologies was really just an internal reaction to just seeing how horrible things got under Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned this during the inauguration, that seeing Trump back in office and hearing what he had to say at his inauguration really did make me feel proud to be American again. Honestly, for one of, I honestly will say that, like, when he won the first time, I was just glad we won. It was like, yeah, own the libs, and I was young when that happened. God, that was 8 years ago. But this time I actually felt proud to be an American, for possibly the first time in my life.
Wow.
And it's enough, it's enough to...
I mean, in another time and place that would have provoked outrage from people, but Michelle Obama said it first, so they opened the door to this. From what I've gathered, Dugan's fourth theory is still very much liberal, not 20th century liberalism, but kind of what if we took it down a different path? Yeah, fourth political theory has always been, I think, almost intentionally nebulous in a way, but yes, I do get that sort of vibe of, let's try a variation here and see what happens. I don't think he'd like that description, but I just mean it in the sense of his perspective about how these things develop in the first place. No, I think that's fair. He sees sort of logical end game and absurdist end of all the different political theories, first, second, and third, from the 20th century, and is just like, okay, why don't we sort of break off, and to borrow coding terminology, why don't we fork this and go off in this other more open source direction?
I do wish that there was some way to kind of break away from the overly intellectual political theories of modern times and just get back to nature in a way, and kind of organize society less around the individual and more around the family. But that would obviously be very difficult to enshrine in law.
In a way, yes. Perhaps not so explicit, but through the use of incentives, I think it is highly possible.
Yeah.
It's basically taking all the social engineering of the 20th and 21st century and sort of reverse engineering it, deconstructing it, and turning it in the other direction.
Well, that's the thing. I kind of the reason why I'm so glad for the crippling of U.S. aid is I kind of just want the social engineering to stop so that we can be our natural selves instead.
Yes.
I don't want to be conditioned in any direction.
Or maybe you wouldn't need to enshrine it into law, since that almost defeats the point. No, also a fair point, Friedman, that nature begins to sort of heal itself, and perhaps a natural way begins to sort of spring forth. But no, I think that's a good point. Past couple of days, you've had Mike Benz making the rounds on like Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, talking about this whole, we need to have a conversation of, what foreign policy is going to look like and everything. And it's like, we can't be so simplistic as to just, cut foreign aid and let that be it. And, we still need to project some sort of soft power or something like that. I think so many, maybe he has good intentions with his arguments, but right now, I think so many people have that sort of fatigue that you're talking about, where they're tired of the nation building, they're tired of the psyops and the gay ops, they are tired of the gaslighting, And frankly, they're just tired of all this empire building that doesn't really seem to benefit the people, but really just seems to benefit the elites at the top.
Yeah.
And they just, they're like, you know what? Close it all down. All of you federal employees go get fucked and burn it all to the ground and salt the earth when you're done.
Yeah, and I mentioned it before, for better or for worse, America still is the hegemon of the global order. I do kind of wish it was possible in some way to maybe dial our role back a bit, kind of to where it was in the late 19th, early 20th century, where America tended to stay out of other countries' business when it could, and would sometimes defend its allies, with using the Navy to particularly to protect the Americas, and would otherwise just sort of be a moderating force when necessary, like during the Russo-Japanese War, for example.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people could live with something like that, where, most people are fine with the idea of engaging in sort of bilateral trade relations with other countries, as long as the trade deals are fair and nobody's trying to collapse one country or the other's economy by, flooding in with cheap goods or cheap labor or something like that. Most people are fine with that sort of thing, but, the whole entangling alliances and, having military bases everywhere and, having to constantly deploy fleets and troops and tanks and everything to who knows where in the world, is just... people are tired of it. They're just tired of it. And
that's another reason why I'm glad to have Trump back. It's been said, but there were no new wars under Trump.
No, there weren't. And we're seeing now that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict appears to be, for the moment, nearing a resolution.
Yeah.
And the big talk today is that the United States and Russia are going to talk peace, and then Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine will be informed what those terms are, and he's just basically going to have to abide by them.
Yeah. So the other thing I was going to talk about, we got sidetracked since then, but I meant to talk about the border. That's just one other thing I wanted to mention. And it's like I said, earlier about the rationalism. Like, one, they think that foreigners are inherently rational in the same way that liberals are. Also, I just think
They're not.
It's also the idea that because we need to respect the desires of the human mind, if someone wants to enter your country, you should let them. You should just give them what they want. It's also why why liberals have a soft touch on crime. They just think that criminals should be free to commit crimes with minimal consequences.
Yeah, and we've seen the results of that. Major cities all across the United States, across Canada, across Europe and the United Kingdom. Nobody feels safe anymore. Nobody feels safe. Whereas before, even going back to the 2000s, you had, I remember, a lot of American cities taking a broken windows policing approach, which I think is highly effective against crime, where you start with the small things and you work your way up from there. Of, someone's got a tail light out on their car, and come to find out, this particular driver is wanted as outstanding warrants for such and such. Haul him in, and just taking this rather ruthless approach to just, we're not fucking around here anymore. And even saying to local homeless population of, you can't be here, get out. It's just a combination of the New York City broken windows policing model meeting almost the draconian levels of Singaporean policing, where they beat and flog people for spitting on the street. At this point, that's what's needed to set a lot of things right.
Yeah, believe it or not, it would be nice if people in San Francisco were not allowed to shit in the street.
Oh yeah, no, that sort of
Um,
thing would get you a public flogging in places like Singapore. Actually, it would
yeah.
get you jailed in Singapore if you did something like that.
Not to be too proud of or anything, but the apparently uniquely Texan policy of just taking border security seriously.
Yes, nice to see
That
that we
said,
finally are having the military deployed to the U.S.-Mexico border.
yeah, that said, actually, when I was in the Texas National Guard, I almost was sent to the border. Due to logistical reasons, they didn't need all of us, and I ended up not being one of the ones who was sent. But I was at like I guess you could call it the mustering, where we were all like doing paperwork and stuff, and I got a briefing and stuff. And I was like, man, this is serious. But yeah, then to learn that like it honestly is scary if you think about it, because then you had Governor Abbott, who wanted to protect the border, and Biden, who, though he wouldn't say it outright, basically didn't want to protect the border. Like, you've seen videos of Border Patrol literally just letting people through.
Yeah,
and
they were
so
likely
and
under
that's
orders
why,
saying, "You will do nothing. You will stand by."
yeah, and that's why what happened, which was the Texas National Guard started physically setting up barriers to block federal border patrol, and I don't remember exactly how it was resolved, but it was kind of scary if you think about it. Like, what if Biden had tried to federalize the Texas National Guard, or worse yet, just sent in the army to, I don't know, do something? We could have had a civil conflict.
That is possible, yes. And you also see now that we've got a director of ICE who is serious about enforcing immigration law. You've got a lot of people that are self-deporting. You've got a lot of people that are getting rounded up and sent back. And also we saw on Inauguration Day that, you can't just use an app and get into the United States. It's to much wailing and gnashing of teeth by Mexican nationals on the other side of the border.
Yeah, and also, it was really based what happened with those Colombians.
Yes, that was also that was quite the interesting development. They're like, no, we're not gonna take these people back. And a
we were like,
few
yes,
short phone calls later, not only are we taking them back, we will take the state private jet and fly these people home personally.
Yeah. After the communist president, did his little childish tirade on Twitter.
God.
Also, you may have seen the clip of a Haitian immigrant getting arrested and yelling out, "I'm not getting deported. And I'm not going back to Haiti." And
yes,
then the last thing he said before they put him in the car was, "I thank Biden and Obama for everything they did for me." And it's like,
he knows who butters his bread.
Thanks for doing our job for us. That's some great press.
Yeah, it's like point proven in real time.
Yeah.
I hate this type of language, but it is a globalized world, and it's probably warranted to be wary of creating any sort of power vacuum. I just don't trust anyone who actually uses that to justify anything, Lamau. Yeah, I mean, we do live in a globalized world. That much is true. Global communications has made the world a lot smaller, and if we've seen anything like with the test flights of Boom Supersonic, we're going to be having a new generation of Concorde jet within the next probably 5-10 years. I know that major US airlines have already placed orders after the successful, even before the successful prototype. So that's coming back. And it appears that the permit process has liberalized in a good way to the point where faster forms of jet travel become a possibility. So what could be a 6-hour trip from New York to London could be or from someplace like Chicago to London, could be cut down to about 2 hours, maybe,
Nice.
or less.
The
11-hour flights from Chicago or Dallas to Tokyo could get cut in half to like 5 or 6. So
the two other things I was going to say about the border is, one, it's just nice to see that there's not going to be a civil conflict, that Abbott and Trump are working together.
Yes.
I shouldn't have to say that, but it's nice.
It is nice. Indeed it is. And
that, and I also just think that Texas's track record speaks for itself. We know how to handle our border, and so we will cooperate with the Fed when we can, but if we have to do it ourselves, we will.
Yeah.
You may have heard that, like, in 2023, the Texas Rangers and Texas National Guard seized an island that was controlled by cartels and used for drug trafficking and human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had done a similar thing with another island the year before. Like, that's just how we do things down here, son. We don't need no Fed down here. They
take care of it. Action Bastard, welcome in. Good to see you.
Hey.
Freakman, to your point, I think that 21st century will see us moving towards a more multipolar world.
That would be nice, and maybe to a lesser extent a more multipolar America.
How do you mean?
Well, honestly, I in the situation we're in now, yes, we do need a strong president who's willing to clean house and give us a clean slate. But I would also like the states to just be more free to sort out their own affairs.
In some ways, I think that they will be given that sort of free reign. It seems like the attitude and the climate is such that we could see that, provided, however, they don't actively try to interfere with the administration's agenda.
Yeah, that said, I mean, when you look at California, maybe the states have enough freedom already.
Yes, that's how California ran out of water, and you had Los Angeles residents having to put out fires with almond milk.
Yeah, it's like, could it be any more like California stereotype? They ran out of water because of too many environmental regulations. They were putting out the fires with almond milk. There's a rumor that the fires were started by eco-terrorists.
Speaking of, eco-terrorists, that wouldn't surprise me in the least.
And the best of all is that the mayor of LA was visiting Ghana on the day the fires began to congratulate them for electing their first female president.
Well, of course she was. Speaking of, did you hear Denmark wants to buy California? I tell you what, they give us Greenland, they take California, we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
I think that is a fair exchange. I mean, when you think about it, the whole bloody thing's going to fall into the Pacific Ocean with one well-placed earthquake at the San Andreas Fault anyway, so, let that be their problem and not ours.
Yeah. And I guess to address another concern that I've heard people bring up with Trump is, the issue with Mexico and the cartels. Like, he says, like, we're going to take action against the cartels. No, we're not going to go to war with Mexico. We're not going to invade Mexico. That's not going to happen. For one thing, like, you look at America's history of war with Mexico, like the Mexican-American War. Yeah, we fought them on the western frontier where we could, but it was kind of difficult because it's all desert. The war was really decided when we landed in Veracruz and marched into Mexico City, because that's Mexico's only port. And so a land war with Mexico would actually be really difficult because of its geography.
I don't think it's going to come to that, though. I think the president is right to declare drug cartels as terrorist organizations.
Yeah,
and I think the extent of what you would see, worst case scenario, if they do have to put troops on the ground, there will be some sort of operation, either joint or solo, either with the Mexican government and their military, or they'll just go it alone with the full sanction of the Mexican government. I mean, it's the American military. Mexico is not going to oppose them.
But it'll just be like special forces, basically, sent in to kill high-value targets.
More than likely, yes. Highly trained elite forces, small teams that can get in, lay waste to these drug cartels, and just in and out, done. Because as much as, you take like MS-13, for example. This is a group that's has a reputation of its members having received military training. They're still not American Special Forces.
Yeah.
They're not on the level of like Delta Force or
SEAL Team 6.
SEAL Team 6, there's another good one. Or even, some of the equivalents like the French Foreign Legion or the British SAS or something. They're not on that level. So any military training they might have easily outflanked and outgunned by anything that the Americans or any other Western power could throw at them. Or the 82nd Airborne, that's another good one, action. Very good.
And as for I mentioned earlier, it might be practical under the right circumstances for the United States to annex parts of Canada. That would be much less likely to happen with Mexico because of the trade agreements we have with them. Like, if we annex the northern parts of Mexico, they wouldn't be part of Mexico anymore, and they wouldn't benefit from the trade agreement.
Yeah.
So, do you want to watch that video now? Or
before we do that, I did want to get your thoughts on the whole reaction from Canadians about U.S. tariffs. We've seen like the videos of Canadian liquor stores taking Tito's vodka off the shelves. Things like that, which all seems like a lot of virtue signaling to me. But
I was going to say it comes across the same way as the Colombian president's rant on Twitter. It's all just meant for show. Eventually, they'll come to a practical decision. What that is, who can say? They may choose to live with the tariffs, or they may not. And frankly, I don't particularly care what the Canadian government wants to do.
Yeah, no, that's. Yeah, Justin Trudeau can go get fucked.
Yeah.
It is virtue signaling, because if it's on the shelf, they already bought it, lol. Yeah, no, that's true. It's like, wait a minute, you've already bought the stock wholesale. You've already paid the taxes on it. You're just passing it on to your consumers, presumably. So it's like, yeah, it's all just performative. It's all theater. It's like, oh, you're taking down bottles of Tito's vodka. Okay, whatever. It's kind of mediocre vodka anyway, but, it's your shop, your decision. Yeah, in the end, they just look stupid and just behaving all stubborn and prideful little children.
Yeah. Oh, I guess one other topic worth discussing is, to what extent do you see this reflected in Europe? Because there's been talk for years of something similar to the MAGA movement happening in Europe, but I kind of lost hope for that when Le Pen lost in 2017.
There is hope, especially in Britain. I actually can show you this. This is I had to kind of sneak through the paywall on GB News, but headline from GB News: mega poll shows reform landslide in Wales, Farage to take 70% of seats from Labour. And we're not just seeing that in Wales, we're seeing this just all over. I think let me go over to I'm going to go over here to X and let me let's see. Go over to Rupert Lowe. He's an MP for Reform. Let's see. Here we are. Reform 6 points clear. We're going to win the next election and we're going to restore Britain. This is from Find Out Now. Polling: if a general election was called tomorrow, how would you vote? Reform UK taking the lead with 29 points. Labour trailing far behind at 23. The Tories, an absolute joke at 21. And then Lib Dems, Greens, Scottish Nationalist Party, just pathetic showing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
People have had a taste for like the past 6+ months of two-tier Keir Starmer and Labour ruling over Britain, and they are worse than what we got with the Tories from Gordon Brown onwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely just it's laughable, and Britain is in a bad way because of Labour's policies.
The way I've heard it described is that, like, there are the beginnings of like populist movements in continental Europe, and yet ironically not as much in UK, the country that kind of started it in Europe.
The closest thing they have is Nigel Farage, Rupert Lowe, Richard Tice, and the gang at Reform UK.
Yeah, I've even heard UK described as woke North Korea, like the last country holding out.
In some ways, yes. That's easy to see because there's a lot that needs to get fixed. Yeah. They need to stop the boats. They need to stop all of the migrants coming over and send the ones that are here or who are on UK shores home, whatever that might be. They've got to eliminate the whole net zero approach to carbon emissions. They've got to liberalize their economy, get the bureaucracy off the back of entrepreneurs and people who are trying to open up a business, because nobody's opening up a business in the UK anymore. Nobody's bothering. The only people who can survive are the big merchant banks and, all these gigantic mega corporations who will just, go over to someplace like Ireland and domicile there and then not pay hardly any in taxes to inland revenue. There's been for a long time a housing shortage in the United Kingdom, and a lot of that stems from the Town and Country Act of 1947, I believe. That's got to go. And they've got to start building more housing, good quality housing, and get rid of all this NIMBYism and everything that is just whatever good intentions that some people might claim of, keeping the English countryside. We need housing. We need housing for people. There's a lot of young people who will, as it stands now, they will never know what it's like to own a home. If they're lucky, they might inherit property from their parents. The national health system is in just as bad a shape as the Canadian healthcare system, if not worse. You've got hospitals that are absolutely falling apart over there, to where if a patient weighs too much, and if all of the doctors and nurses in an operating team, if their collective weight is too much, the entire floor could collapse in an operating theater.
Oh my God.
That is how bad the infrastructure is for hospitals with the national health system. It is bad.
Well, I wish the Reform Party the best of luck. I'm also curious to what extent the British youth is, like, I don't know, what do they think of the monarchy these days? Because I know there's a lot, like, I imagine it's probably firmly divided, almost radicalized. There's probably a lot of young British people who absolutely would want to get rid of it, and there's probably like a small right-wing movement that really wants to revive it.
Freakman, I'm glad you brought that up in chat. The treatment of the farmers is also devastating. Yes, they just recently had some protests in London, where they had tractors out on London streets, blocking up traffic for a bit. And there's the Labour government. Basically, they want to take everyone's farms and then sell them off at firestorm prices to large multinationals like BlackRock. And
don't they want to make them into battery farms?
Basically turn them into battery farms for migrants. Yeah, that's the goal. That is the goal. But yeah, as far as the youth go, I know they've been talking about this on like podcast of the Lotus Eaters, which is a fantastic show, by the way. Everyone needs to subscribe to the Lotus Eaters. Young people, they don't care. And so many young people are still affected by the woke mind virus. You have a large enough constituency, at least 1/3 of like Zoomers, for example, are fairly based, which, you know, that could be enough for a movement, but you still got 2/3 that are just, you know, your typical woke shitlibs. So still have to fight the underdog fight, I suppose. Maybe that will change over time. You know, maybe. I know that Reform UK has been resonating more as of late with youth of voting age in the country. They do have a lot more members of their party that are younger. A lot of them have appeared on stage with Nigel Farage at events, and yeah, Reform does seem to be sort of capturing the imagination of a wide swath of people across the UK. Everyone from the elderly pensioners to people in the middle age to young working class, and even just the youth. Everyone seems to be... Reform kind of has the wind at their backs right now. And so the momentum and the victory is theirs to lose at this point. Because Labour is just more managed decline. Conservatives tinker at the edges. But yeah, they are effectively controlled opposition. As we have seen with everyone from Rishi Sunak to Boris Johnson to Gordon Brown to all of these people that ran the Tories for so long, promised that they would do something about migrants, never did anything, and if anything, under Boris Johnson, everything got accelerated. Everything, all of the decline got accelerated.
The phrase "controlled opposition" made me remember a funny thing I read, which is that a lot of the young American right-wingers would rather be called Trump supporters than Republicans, because if they are afraid that if they call themselves Republicans, people will assume that they're rhinos.
Yeah.
They want to.
It became a very similar ethos with the Tories of don't bother giving them power; they wouldn't know what to do with it anyway.
That said, I do think while there are still some rhinos in the Republican Party, they've kind of learned to be quiet and let the new wave do its thing. It's not looking nearly as bright for the Democratic Party.
No.
I don't remember who it was, but like some Democratic Party leaders are literally saying that they don't even know what the party stands for anymore because they committed so hard to the intersectional progressivism that Obama and Biden and Harris represented, and it was defeated utterly, and they don't really know where to go from there.
They went full retard on gay race communism, and that lost.
Yeah. And honestly, so like the Democratic Party went from the party of slavery to the party of handouts during the Depression to the party of racial segregation to, I guess, the party somehow also along the way Roosevelt started the Progressive Party, and when they failed to topple the Republican Party, a lot of those progressives joined the Democrats, and that kind of caused the Democrats it kind of caused them to transition from racist conservatives to racist liberals.
Yeah.
And so while they don't acknowledge it, and to a certain extent don't even realize it, a lot of their policies are still hurtful to blacks in America. They just trick themselves into thinking that they're helping them. And yeah, then they just kind of became the party of doing the opposite of whatever the Republicans would do.
Yeah.
And now I guess their messaging and their ideology is so negative. There's nothing affirmative about it that it's kind of impossible to define what it is.
Well,
And that's what I like about.
Think of the perception that most people have now of your average Democrat voter. And not all of them are like this, of course, but for so many people, the stereotype that is built up in their head of, as far as brand perception goes, is of someone who is just absolutely angry, annoying, and insufferable.
Yeah, whiny idiots.
Yeah. I imagine it's much like in Spain, where most of the people amenable to the crown in principle have absolutely no faith in it as it is now, if not outright disgusted with them. Yeah, I don't think younger generations like Gen Z, for example, they don't appear, based on polling and everything that we have, to place a whole lot of stock and a whole lot of faith in the royal family in the UK.
And,
it's sort of like the Church of England. It's there, it's nice, but they don't really care and don't really want to have much to do with it. At the same time, they're not rabid Republicans in the British sense of people who want to get rid of the monarchy and just have parliamentary democracy. They just don't care. Yeah. They just don't care. And, certainly the royal family haven't done themselves many favors with that either. House of Windsor, going back to, Elizabeth, for as long as she was alive, was always notorious for being a bit more sympathetic to Labour Party prime ministers than she was anyone from the Tories. Always had a rather contentious relationship with the Baroness Thatcher, and I think that continues on to this date with King Charles.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, which is a bit ironic, because I think if anyone has the opportunity and could get the political capital to repeal the Town and Country Act of 47, it would be reform. I think they could get it done. They need to get it done. I don't hear them talking about getting it done. It needs to get done, because when you do that, you actually have the opportunity to create the King's vision for Britain, which he wrote about, a sort of manifesto type book for the design and planning of current and future cities and towns in the UK. There was, where was it? I have to look this up. Yeah, he's always... If you've read his book, A Vision for Britain, he wrote it back when he was the Crown Prince. Here we go. Poundbury, England. I encourage people to look up Poundbury, England, and that right there is sort of King Charles's vision for the ideal British town. In terms of architecture, in terms of planning and everything. We've got a Wikipedia entry here. You can get an idea of what it looks like. Absolutely none of the modernist architecture, which has proven to be quite a blight, especially in major cities like London. Yeah, it's actually a magnificent and quaint little town. You get a chance to visit there, do go. I remember that, along with calling himself Charles, it made a lot of people go, Zeist. Yes. No, on that one thing, His Majesty is absolutely right. But yeah, I think it's going to take the repeal of the Town and Country Act before we can get it done, because otherwise you're just going to have NIMBYs and planning committees stepping in and just constantly gumming up the works.
I will say I like this image. It is modern looking, to suit the sensibilities of people who just hate beautiful buildings,
and still
but it
preserve
still
the
looks
countryside.
nice. Yeah. I don't get to see that much, really pretty architecture living, because I live in a gigantic city. But what I do get to see here in Houston, I appreciate.
Yeah.
Also, before we move on, one last thing on the subject of monarchy. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If Texas ever did have a monarchy, the ideal royal family would be the Clayburgh family, the owners of King Ranch. Everybody knows them. Everybody loves them.
The House of Clayburgh. Hey, Princess, welcome in. Good to see you. It's been a while. How are you? I don't know. Imagine they don't want the responsibility and might be afraid of becoming a real political player again. I mean,
they're a bit out of practice.
Yeah, it's. I mean, with all of these, you're going to have to learn how to govern again. And for as much as Nigel, he's got a great show on GB News. He's got. I think he does have, at long last, a bright future in politics. I mean, everything he's been through has been sort of built up to. I do believe it's no exaggeration. We are looking at the next Prime Minister of Great Britain with Nigel Farage. But for as much as he gives a great speech, talks a good talk, and as much as he's got a great team with Rupert Lowe and Richard Tice and all of them, at the end of the day, they are still going to have to govern, and they are still going to have to govern effectively, should they want to avoid a no-confidence vote in Parliament. And, giving a good speech on the campaign trail is a lot different from actually governing. But it is, I think, what we're seeing in the United States is a blueprint being laid out for how it can be done. And we're also seeing it with Milei over in Argentina. Just an absolutely ruthless and light speed approach, and just dramatic cutting of government and government spending, and at long last righting the ship, which we're seeing now with Argentina. I mean, for the first time in at least a generation or two, it's no longer a basket case, that they are actually a serious contender on the world stage. That has not been seen in a long time.
Well,
Texas is smelly. Lamau smells like freedom.
I'll admit, it gets pretty hot in Texas. Sometimes it's not the most fun living here, but I like it. It suits me just fine.
The 100-degree summers.
It's been cold here recently, though. I'm sure to some people it hasn't been so cold. They wouldn't call it so cold, but to a Texan it is.
Yes, I'm going to be seeking refuge from hot summers in America fairly soon here. Touch wood. I'll be off to Hokkaido, where the weather is fairly mild, and it's actually quite pleasant and peaceful up there. So if you see me gone on hiatus for about a month in the summer, no VTubing, no streaming, no content, you'll know why. Got snowed in last month in Houston. Yes. Also
it snowed here recently. I did not get snowed in though. I'll say this, because you obviously, I've picked up that you travel a lot.
I do.
I did this last year, and I highly recommend it. Well, have you ever been to Mexico?
I have. Went on a cruise. We stopped off in the Yucatan Peninsula. Beautiful little town called Merida. Excellent food, friendly people, gorgeous Spanish architecture. That's when I was there, at least. This was about 10 plus years ago. They were in the process of preserving and restoring a lot of these beautiful old Spanish colonial houses. And yeah, I imagine that's come along quite nicely.
If you visit Mexico again, I highly recommend you visit the city of San Miguel de Allende.
San Miguel de Allende, huh? Okay.
Yeah, very, very beautiful city. Very lively, especially if you go. I don't know the date. I want to say it's in September or something. The feast day of Saint Michael. Apparently, it's absolutely gigantic. You know, like thousands of people come to the city, and it's like, and they hold this gigantic parade.
Festa de San Miguel. Interesting. Almost sounds like
Well-
Carnival in Brazil.
Yeah, probably.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and
Check it out.
what I loved about visiting Mexico and visiting San Miguel is it looks a bit bleak, you could say, when you're walking the streets, because everything is paved with stones and the houses all have really high walls.
Yeah,
But
notice
the
that
moment you
Marita
go
too.
inside, a property, you see they all have these beautiful gardens inside.
Yes.
And if you go to a restaurant or something where you can eat on the roof, you get this beautiful view of the city and realize just how green it is.
Yes. No, I did notice that, especially like a few of the restaurants we stopped off at. It was like you were almost into this entirely new world.
Yeah.
Stepping through a portal through these old wooden doors, and then all of a sudden you're in this lovely little villa, and it's just, yeah, a fountain with, water spraying out and birds chirping, and there's just, yeah, it was paradise.
Well, do we finally want to watch this video, or at least some of it?
Yes. We've covered the modernity part first. Now we're getting over to word salad.
Yes. You know what this
so
is? You know what this is? This will give us an appreciation of the bullet we dodged.
The Legend of El Verde. Yes. No, this is recently. I guess there was some sort of demand by the FCC or some government regulatory agency that they release the full interview of.
Yeah, because if you watch the as it originally aired, you can very clearly see how edited it is.
Yes, very heavily edited video for 60 Minutes, which is a production of CBS News in the United States. And what we're going to see, a portion of it, or maybe even all of it, if it holds our interest long enough, of the uncut interview and what it was like with who is this? They don't give his first name, but Mr. Whitaker here interviewing then Vice President Kamala Harris. Yes, Kamala being a bumbling moron. I believe that's what we're going to see here. Let's you can see this, right, Elijah?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, let's roll the tape.
Coming through. Okay, hi everyone. Well, welcome to Mikasa.
Oh, thank you.
Hi.
Hello
She's
again.
already
Hi.
code switching.
Good to see you, Bill. Very well. Thank you. Very
Thank you
well.
for
Hi
welcoming us
everyone.
here.
Hi. What a crew.
What a crew.
Okay.
Big day. Please.
Please, yes.
You got some beautiful artwork here.
I would love.
Also,
to
wait, pause for just a minute.
For
Yeah, sure.
Christmas,
Except the crew.
Just in case anyone forgot, this is what they wanted, with 60 minutes, heavily edited 60 minutes. And then meanwhile, they declined to go on Joe Rogan when he told her that it would be unscripted and unedited, because the thought of holding a conversation for an hour is just so impossible to Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
But then they had the audacity to lie and say that Joe Rogan refused to allow her on.
Which he immediately called bullshit on that and said, no, he said, I'll even go to her. And they're just like, no, they wanted too many restrictions, too many controls on everything. And then Joe Rogan brought the receipts. Exactly right, Action. Wine aren't energy right off the bat. Remember Kamala
Yeah.
Harris, ancient Giga Chad.
All right, let's do this.
All right.
Right. I have to. I've.
Let me know if it's too
So,
loud or too soft,
little
Chad.
known, maybe part of my background is I attended a fine art school,
for a period of time.
She was a theater
And
kid.
even just growing up, we would go to the California Academy of Arts on weekends. Anyway, I love art.
She was one of those.
So when I came in as vice president, I
went to school
partnered
with some of those.
SHAPE, which is a nonprofit that helps supply art around the world for embassies. And I sat down with the curator and gave them an idea, and including with the Baltimore Museum, gave them an idea of what I'd like. And so, normally.
Wait, you in the background. Get out of the way.
A lot of art, which is like scenes of pastures with sheep. Instead, I brought like Carrie Mae Weems. Are you familiar with her? And then, do you know Fred Wilson?
I don't know Fred Wilson.
Okay, so
That's a
chandelier,
beautiful
I begged him. He does big installations, and I've had many.
This right here, what we're hitting, I think, is probably the most authentic we're going to get out of Hedges.
Yeah.
She's fine to show off her furnishings and her fine art and everything, but even Whitaker here is just like, that's nice, Madam Vice President, but to be frank, I don't really give a shit. I'm here for more important things.
Yeah, all this because he said you have some nice paintings.
Yeah.
And they'll walk by it and they'll say, "Oh, is that?"
Although maybe he's doing it on purpose. Maybe he's trying to get her to let her guard down.
Yeah, getting her to relax.
So Fred Wilson.
It's common journalism.
No, I would
technique
never.
here.
Although I would never suggest that he's doing it to trap her.
No,
mainstream
this is
journalist
just a
would do
warm.
that.
This is just a warm up. I've been in Whitaker's position before, where you've had to do this to sort of get your interview subject relaxed and get them to sort of warm up to you, because otherwise they are just going to be so stiff when you ask the first question, and it's just like, yeah, okay, one word answer, not much of a soundbite here, moving on, and then before you know it, what was supposed to be like a half-hour interview is over in like 5-10 minutes.
Okay.
She's already droning on, and it's barely a couple of minutes before the interview starts. Lol.
That's all I'm on. Then that's Ed Clark. You know who Ed Clark is? That's Ed Clark. I've got some Sam Gillum, and he, I'm so sorry that he knew it was here. He was alive when I first came in, but it was at the height of COVID, and then he passed. But his family has come to see it, but he was so happy that his art was in his house.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's all on rotation. Like that one I'll show you is a young black woman from North Carolina. She is so.
I don't remember her name.
Her name.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Really, and so,
I was being too mean.
Like you, who come in the house, who are such, opinion leaders, to be able to showcase all of this for people to see, and then these world leaders, they'll say, "That's American art." Yes, it
How
is.
about that?
Yes, it is.
How about that? Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Yes. Yeah, do whatever you want. I have no pride about this stuff. Yeah.
You sure about that?
Everybody's cell phone on silent.
Okay, and then that mold is at an all-time high today, which is the one thing I am allergic to.
Yeah.
Okay. Pollen is down.
Mold is up.
Mold is up. I know that as a matter of fact, because I was watching CBS this morning.
There you go.
If I had to guess, they probably coached them to be like this, seem relatable and extroverted. Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever really gotten much of a glimpse of Kamala Harris's real personality.
No. Well, that's assuming she actually does have a real personality. Okay, they've just shown the clapperboard here. That's usually to mark where an interview like this would begin, especially in the days when they were still using film. This is obviously videotape or a digitally stored file that they're using now. But, old habits from news and entertainment, just to sort of mark where the actual interview begins here.
Good, yes.
No problem. Just do what you need to do.
Clapper marking where they need to sync sound and whatnot.
We're all perfectly happy.
Everybody happy? You good?
I'm good.
All right. Well, Madam Vice President, one, thank you for doing this.
Of course.
And thank you for inviting us into your home.
Of course.
We're
Our home
going
looks
to
like
be
an
running
Ethan
this
Allen's
on the
showroom.
anniversary of the Hamas attack on
Yeah,
on Israel.
October 7th.
So
Damn,
let's
we're
just
just
start
getting
with
right into it,
Israel.
eh?
One second, Bill.
Yeah.
Sorry, we had someone in the background. I'm afraid you're gonna have to re-ask that.
Okay, whoever's in the dining room?
It was me.
Okay.
So yeah, just to start with Israel.
Okay.
The events of the past few weeks have pushed us to the brink, if not into, an all-out regional war in the Middle East. What can the U.S. do at this point to stop this from spinning out of control?
Well, let's start with October 7th, because obviously what we do now must be in the context of what has happened. And as I reflect on a year ago, and that 1,200 people were massacred.
Shokuma, thank you for the follow.
At a music festival. 250 hostages were taken, including Americans. Women were brutally raped.
Okay, so she's
And
not answering the question.
As I said then, I maintain Israel
Nope.
has a right to defend itself. We would, and how it does so matters. And as we fast forward into what we have seen in the ensuing weeks and months, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we know that, and I think most agree, this war has to end. And that has to be our number one imperative. And that has been our number one imperative. How can we get this war to end? Well, critical elements of that are we have got to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. We have to get aid in. We have to lay the path toward a two-state solution. I do believe
How's that
that
old
we
chestnut?
must maintain that as an objective, no matter how out of reach it seems at the moment. And the work that we have to do is also pay attention to what is happening every day in the region and put U.S. resources into everything we can do diplomatically and otherwise to de-escalate what is happening in the region.
We supply Israel.
Very politician-y answer. She's answering
Yeah,
this when
so-
it's been more than a year past the initial attack, by the way, lol. Yes.
Yeah, it's you can it's almost like a softball question, honestly.
Yeah.
And at the end, in the end,
Such a
what you
canned
basically said is
response,
like,
too.
we need to have a solution, and not taking a side, which, to be fair, is kind of the smart thing to do when talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yes.
But it also just kind of amounted to more spending. Give them more money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the usual
Yeah,
drift goes on.
And that's the problem. Like when your ideology is so materialistic, of course you're going to think that every problem can be solved not by adjusting your strategy, but just by throwing more money at it.
Yes.
With billions of dollars in military aid. And yet, Prime Minister Netanyahu seems to be charting his own course. The Biden-Harris administration, has pressed him to agree to a ceasefire. He's resisted. You urged him not to go into Lebanon. He went in anyway. He has promised to make Iran pay for the missile attack, and that has the potential of expanding the war. Does the U.S. have no sway over Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Not with Biden in
Well,
office.
let's start with this. On this subject, the aid that we have given Israel allowed Israel to defend itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just
Okay. Not talking
meant
about that.
to attack the Israelis and the people of Israel. And I think that is the most recent example of why what we do to assist in their defense around military aid is important. And when we think about the threat that Hamas, Hezbollah presents, Iran, I think that it is without any question our imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against those kinds of attacks. Now, the work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles, which include the need for humanitarian aid, the need for this war to end, the need for a deal to be done, which would release the hostages and create a ceasefire. And we're not going to stop
Imagine
putting that pressure.
Imagine if a man said, the diplomatic work that I'm doing with my
leaders in
cheating
the
wife
region,
is an
including Arab
ongoing
leaders.
pursuit.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening. The Wall Street Journal said that that your administration has repeatedly been blindsided by Netanyahu. And in fact, he has rebuffed just about all of
He knows a weak leader when he sees one.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, the work that
They all
we
did.
have done has resulted in a
And they
number
know a
of
strong leader when they see one.
Yes.
movements in that region by Israel that were
So
very
does
much
everyone else, love.
prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region. And we're not going to stop doing that. We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Just one last. Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer
See,
to
that's
that
the
question
like
is yes.
she's shying away from the question
we are-
because
Yeah, it's a simple
To
yes or
answer-
no question, and
Well,
especially one of the questions that you need to answer. Yes, we do.
well, yeah, but that's the thing. Like, to say yes after everything he's said about Netanyahu would seem dishonest, and to say no would appear weak. So it's a difficult question, which is why it would be very convenient for Trump, since he wasn't in office at this time. He could have been like, "Yeah, Netanyahu's screwing us, and I'm going to put a stop to it."
Yeah,
And that's the sort of thing that Trump would do. He doesn't really shy away from difficult questions.
right. But he still engages on his own terms. You can tell we're not the audience for this because the question, does the US have sway over Israel, could be framed as a pretty spicy one. Yes, one that can sink entire presidential campaigns. That's not even answering the question. No, it's not. It's, pivoting over to talk of alliance between the American people and the Israeli people.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't feel like I'm in touch with the Israeli people.
Yeah, no, it's like we don't exactly have hostility towards them, but also it's like it's their country, it's their business. We're just going to.
Well, I was talking more about saying there's an alliance between the American people and Israeli people. That's a lie. I've never met someone from Israel. I don't feel a personal connection to them.
I myself have met Israelis, lovely people, of course.
Fair enough, but the point I'm trying to make is that it's just diplomatic relations between the governments.
Yeah, that's the real question here. Of course you put an American, or in my case a Brit and an Israeli in the room, and they're probably going to figure out a way to get along with each other. But that's not the call of the question here. The question is a matter of governments and whether the US has any sort of sway or influence over Israel. And based off of the actions of the Israeli Prime Minister when all of this was going on, Israel wasn't looking at the United States in a serious way.
Yeah. And as for the whole Israel-Palestine conflict, they say they want to work toward a two-state solution, and I've heard it said that might be what things are moving toward, but it's honestly kind of hard to believe, simply because
I don't even know if that's possible anymore.
Yeah,
I really don't.
If it ever was, because the Palestinians have rejected two-state solutions so many times.
Yeah.
So who knows what will happen?
Yeah. Not going to read that out, Freakman, and also please be very careful what you say. I should not like to time out or ban anyone.
To do what is important to support whatever leadership is in Israel that is defending the security of the state of Israel.
Let's shift gears here.
Yeah, because clearly we're not getting anywhere on this one.
Yeah.
Why do you want to be President of the United States?
Here we go.
There are many reasons, but probably first and foremost, I truly believe in the promise of America. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the
And
American
what is
people.
that?
You know, we are people who have ambition and aspirations and dreams.
They always do this. They use
And
positive but very
optimism
vague
and
language to
If
trick
you look
people
at
into
the
agreeing with
character of
them.
who we are and how we have achieved the strength that we have achieved.
And it's just, I can't help but roll my eyes whenever she says stuff like this. It's just so cringe.
Yeah, like she says, I believe in the promise of America, but she doesn't say what that is.
Yeah, what even is that anymore?
Yeah.
Is she drunk during this interview? Wouldn't surprise me if she were. I've
She
only
had a
ever
few
heard
globs
it
of wine.
at 2x, 3x speed because she speaks so slowly. Yes, she does.
Yeah.
She not only is prone to word salad, but she just drones on and takes for fucking ever.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and
let's
like,
keep going.
yeah, go ahead. We shouldn't waste any time.
Because of our character and our belief in the promise of America. And I'm running for president because I want to do everything that is possible to create.
You're running for president because the Democratic Party couldn't think of anyone better.
Those goals, those ambitions, and those dreams. And that is why you will hear me talk about my plan for an opportunity economy, to invest in what we can do, not only to bring the cost of living and prices down for folks.
The cost of living that you raised.
Yeah. Can I be real here? Like, really real?
Go
I
ahead.
find the
It's your
parallels
stream.
quite ominous between her response and what we saw with Senator Ted Kennedy, also being interviewed, I believe, by 60 Minutes, on why do you want to be president? His own answer, such a word salad that he effectively ended his campaign with that one interview.
We've achieved a lot of success. Prices are still too high. You know it, I know it. But what we can do
And
to
whose
invest
fault
in
is that?
Yeah.
innovation that is happening in startups, in our small businesses, what we can do to invest in the industries of the future, what we can do to maintain America's strength in the global context.
But that's why you want to run. That's why you want to be.
That's why I'm
president.
running. That and some other reasons.
But you're
Okay,
asking
like
the American
what?
people to make you the most powerful person on the planet. Why do you deserve the American people's votes?
Well, first of all, I have a career and a history of being very clear
Okay.
that
Relevant
I
how?
think of my role of leadership, and in particular now for the last 4 years as vice president and moving forward as president, if the voters will have me, as being a leader on behalf of all Americans. As you know, I spent the majority of my career as a prosecutor. And I'm going to tell you, I never asked a victim of crime, a witness, whether they were a Democrat, are you Republican, are you an independent. The only thing I ever asked folks is, are you okay? And I believe that America deserves a leader
A lot of people aren't
who
okay.
works on
No,
behalf
then they were definitely not okay. They're still not okay to a certain extent, but they're getting better. Translation: me. Yeah, there's. Okay, inside voices, everyone. It's a typical woman moment. I mean, what? Sorry, let's keep rolling.
for all Americans and understands the importance of knowing that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And my career and my work has always been about being grounded in common sense approaches to getting things done. And when it comes to what we need to do as
Empty
it relates
platitude
to
this,
national
empty
security,
platitude
we just had
that.
that conversation. That includes understanding and respecting the power and the strength
She sounds
of the
worse
United
than the
States of
C-suite
America,
executives
and
I
our
hear holding meetings at my
responsibility
company.
to be a global leader, to nurture and strengthen our alliances around the world, to respect the U.S. military and its most noble mission to do the work of appreciating alliances, be it NATO or others, to do the work of pursuing diplomacy when it is in the best interest of our national security and prosperity. And my experiences tell me not only that those must be priorities of the United States of America and the President of the United States of America and the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, but also all of those experiences tell me that the American people in this election have a clear choice. Because on the other side of the equation, we are looking at the former president, Donald Trump, who has shown himself
God, you're still going
to
on.
be, when he was a
and
commander,
this is her fallback strategy
someone
always.
who
Well,
gave
I'm not
away
Trump.
America's standing in terms of our principles of standing up to dictators and autocrats. You see how he compliments Putin even today.
Oh no!
Someone
Donald Trump
who-
complimented Putin. We can't have that.
We can't. Again, like like I said, this whole idea of moral purity. Like, you can't say anything nice at all about someone that I have deemed a bad person.
Yeah. It's like, you can't even like, oh, hey, he's got a great tailor. No. All of a sudden that's a
he's
war
managed
crime.
he's managed to make his bald head look pretty good. Most bald-headedness is usually not something most men can make look good, but Putin, he makes it look okay.
Yeah. The image of a judge at the end of a trial, it's about some violent crime being like, I just want to know one thing. Are you okay? Is hilarious. It's the 2016 strategy of Trump bad. Yeah, Orange Man bad.
Yeah, no, they
was
really
prepared to
still are
walk
on
away
that.
From our
Yeah.
alliances, NATO is
That's
the
really all they've
strongest
got when you think
military
about it.
alliance the world
Well,
has ever
like I
known.
said, Democrat leaders are now saying that
We
they
have
don't
seen
know what the
someone
party
in
stands for
Donald Trump
anymore.
who
No.
openly criticizes the United States military, men and women,
To hear her prattle on, I don't think she does either.
at great sacrifice, serve our country and defend the principles upon which we were founded. He calls them suckers and losers.
But Madam Vice President,
Again, all of that debunked and dealt with.
Yeah.
registered voters still say they don't know you. They don't know what makes you tick. And why do you think that is? I mean, you have been vice president for almost 4 years. You've been on the national scene for longer. What's the disconnect?
It's an election, Bill. And
What?
I take
Oh.
it seriously that I have to earn everyone's vote. And that's why
But
I'm
you've had
traveling
4
the
years.
country.
Yeah, again, you're not answering the question. You had 4 fucking years to figure this out. It's like, all he's asking, who the fuck are you?
Yeah, especially.
Or do you
like,
even know
with-
yourself?
Yeah, and it really highlights the fact that she did not deserve to be vice president.
No.
I want to say she was one of the most low rated. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no.
Out of all
she
the candidates
was one
in
of the first to
2020.
drop out, especially after Tulsi Gabbard absolutely decimated her in
Yeah, and
the
then
primary
Biden
debates.
himself said she's literally a diversity hire.
She is. Yeah, that's the only reason that he picked her, is that he wanted to get the female vote and he also wanted to get the black vote.
Or
And-
the Indian vote, or
Or
the
the-
Mexican
yeah,
vote,
depending
depending
on-
on what day of the week it is.
Yeah, depending on the day of the week or her mood at the time.
Yeah.
I've seen you in a few states in the last couple of days. I am talking with folks where they live. I am listening to folks. And
Again, not answering the
working
question,
to
who
earn
the
the
fuck
vote
are
of
you?
every American. This is an election for President of the United States. No
Yeah.
one should be able to take for granted that they can just declare themselves a candidate and automatically.
And yet here
say
you
Well,
are.
you did.
And that's what I.
You weren't even
Let me tell you
elected.
what your critics and the columnists say.
Okay.
They say that the reason so many voters don't know you is that you have changed your position on so many things. You were against fracking, now you're for it. You supported looser immigration policies, now you're tightening them up. You were for Medicare for all, now you're not.
It is all of this. It's that age-old chestnut
Mhm.
from the late, great Rush Limbaugh. he would constantly beat the drum about this, that Democrats can only really stand a chance of getting elected when they act like Republicans on the campaign trail.
So many
Interesting.
people don't truly know what you believe or what you stand for, and I know you've heard that.
So, let's be clear. First of all, a lot of the positions that you were talking about have been discussed and dispensed with in 2020, 4 years ago. But let me be clear on something. In the last 4 years, I have been Vice President of the United States.
So her
Not a
response
senator.
to you changed your policy on a bunch of things was shut up.
Yeah. It's like, that's been dealt with already. Shut up. Next question.
From a particular state, not coming from a particular state, but Vice President of the United States of America. And I have been traveling our country, and I have been listening to folks.
You said that
seeing
already.
What is possible in terms of common ground, common sense solutions, building consensus.
Okay, what are those common sense
And
solutions?
that is why I have taken the positions that I take.
What are
not
those
dispensing with
positions?
my values, but understanding we have to. A real leader has to find consensus. So, for example, on the issue of fracking, I've been very clear since 2020. I will not end fracking. I did not as Vice President. In fact, as Vice President of the United States, I cast the decisive vote. I broke the tie in Congress that now allows more leases for fracking.
Okay, but was that you out of any sort of conviction, or was that because you got campaign contributions from big oil and from big energy companies?
Yeah.
I mean, is this the real Kamala Harris we're talking about, or is this just another bought and paid for empty suit politician?
Yeah.
The leader of the most powerful country in the world is definitely standing up to a lot of people. Oh, I can't stand how whiny she sounds, I know.
On the issue of health care in America, my value
She
has
just sounds
always
like
been
Kedden from HR.
that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can
And I think
afford
what
it,
she's
which
doing is
why-
she's trying to put this this kind of tone in her voice, this affectation to make herself sound sympathetic, like, oh, I understand how hard it is, that, but it just makes her sound whiny.
No, and she wouldn't know a thing about genuine struggle. I mean, you look at her life, and it has been, for the most part, a life of comfort, and even to a certain extent, privilege. I mean,
Reminds me of
she has lived an international life. She may have been born in America, but she spent most of her formative years in Canada. So, if anything, she has more of a Canadian mindset to things than American. It's sort of like
suddenly it
Kimi
all makes
Badenoch,
sense.
the current head of the Tory party, born in the United Kingdom, but spent most of her formative years in Kenya before returning to the UK for university. It's like, can you say that you are truly British or even English at heart when you have spent so much of your life in Kenya? That's something that nobody really talks about with Badenoch, and it's something that nobody really bothered to dive deeper on when it came to Hedis. Of course, I don't know if it would have been productive to the conversation at the time. It might have been just a distraction. Just continuously. It probably wasn't even really needed, but it was. It's something that's worth having that discussion over. It's like, can we really say a woman who is running for the American presidency, who spent most of her life in Canada and didn't really have a lot of exposure to the struggles and hardships of like the American working class, can we really say that she knows anything about that and knows how to represent them effectively?
Well, after seeing 4 years of her in office, I can definitively say no.
Yeah, no. And we're seeing the same thing with Kimi Badenoch. It's like you transfer planes in Houston, and that somehow makes someone from California a Texan. Maybe she is Justin Trudeau. He's known for his ethnic disguises. Indeed. Indeed he is. But we're not supposed to talk about that.
He's known for wearing camouflage, as it were.
Yes, a lot of camouflage. So much camouflage. Anyway.
I cast the tie-breaking vote in the United States Congress that has now allowed us to cap the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month. The work that I have been a part of and helped lead about capping the cost of prescription medication for our seniors at $2,000 a year, all born out of my belief that we need to bring the price of medication down because
capping prices doesn't work
for too many people.
No, that just creates shortages
to fill their prescription. That's why I've been a huge advocate for what we have accomplished finally to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of the American people.
You have
Bureaucrats don't know how to negotiate anything.
But your positions have. And I think people
They couldn't
want to
negotiate
know.
the way
Man, like now that I've heard it, I can't unhear it. Yeah, like
as your critics say,
her voice. Honestly, as superficial as it sounds, she just doesn't have a presidential voice, if that makes sense. She doesn't talk like a president.
No, she really doesn't. I don't know that I've ever seen, aside from maybe, well, in recent history, Tulsi Gabbard, she sounded presidential. She sounded confident and firm. It also helped that she was and is very easy on the eyes. But yeah, no, a truly, gosh, in recent history, the only one that I can really think of is Baroness Thatcher when she was Prime Minister of Britain.
Yeah.
That's really the only female figure that I can think of who is, a world leader and had that sort of, I guess you could call it the gravitas of, or the weight of glory of a real leader. That sort of strength and strong will. I mean, there's a reason she was called the Iron Lady. Yeah, we're not seeing that with Harris. We never did.
Opportunism.
I think that we should understand the importance of a leader building consensus. I believe in building consensus. And I believe
Sure, it
in
sounds weak.
finding a way that
what does
the
that
American
mean?
people...
Yeah.
And we are diverse.
To me, I mean, I'm just bitter and cynical. Hello, British. But to me, that just sounds like, I'm ready to walk in the room and give up and give everybody what they want and just let everybody walk all over me.
Yeah, maybe.
That to me, especially, it's the same thing with compromise. We hear of compromise and bipartisanship with a lot of American politicians, whether they were Democrat or Republican, and too often the realpolitik of that translated into Republicans bend over, grab the ankles, take it up the arse, and give the Democrats everything they want.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, bipartisanship isn't even necessarily a sign of good things. The war in Iraq had bipartisan support.
Yeah, and look how that turned out.
Yeah.
Happy
And
Mars,
also,
welcome in.
Also, the mention of like building consensus. So the way you described what it could mean is valid, but also if you want to interpret it even more cynically, she could basically mean social engineering. Yeah.
There's what so many of the globalist elite have been doing for so long. The idea of global consensus is really just, what do a bunch of elites gathered in some undisclosed location, what are they going to do? Decide for the rest of the world.
Yeah, and like you said, she just kind of comes across like she would have like tried to please everyone, and in doing so, just kind of let people walk all over her. And it would have come across, I think, if she had been president, it would have come across not that different from Biden. The weak-willed figurehead of some invisible behind-the-scenes apparatus. You're like, okay, clearly Biden was not really the man in charge. Who was? I don't know. And it probably would have been the same way with her.
A lot of his functionaries were the real people at the helm of power in government. I mean, the whole thing with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, that was a product of two people primarily, Antony Blinken and Victoria Nuland. And honestly, I tend to concur with Tucker Carlson. Those two need to be arrested and do prison time. They have committed crimes against humanity with what happened between Russia and Ukraine. That just and especially what happened on the ground with Ukraine. That was just it's monstrous. What happened on their watch. Well, she's so used to this extroverted HR manager type personality, she actually thinks people like that. Yeah, nobody likes HR. Nobody likes anyone from HR. Everybody looks at, if you are, every wise engine knows not to trust anyone from HR. So yeah, HR is not your friend. They're there to protect the company, not you.
Yeah.
She couldn't even build a sandwich, let alone consensus in the Senate and Congress. Yeah. Well, the trouble with someone like her is she could get so insecure about being viewed as weak by other world leaders that she would actually escalate conflicts. I could see that.
Yeah, you never know.
I could see that. She would unnecessarily escalate something just to prove a point. For all the talk in so-called mainstream intelligentsia and, pop culture conversations about male pride and ego, let me raise you.
Well,
let me raise you the female ego, and I will show you prideful.
Well, not even necessarily pride, but like just the need to appear strong when you find yourself in a position of leadership. And it affects different people differently. And the an example that you reminded me of was when I was in basic training in the Army. All the drill sergeants need to project an image of like, "Don't fuck with me,"
Every one of them must be out of the Army.
But it's all for a reason, of course.
Yes.
But that said, the female drill sergeants were always way louder and way meaner than the male ones because they kind of needed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who knows, that might have been what we got if she had won.
The historical statistics about queens and regents doesn't help her case, lol. No.
The she-wolf of California.
That was also the perception with Hillary. Yeah, no, Hillary, I believe, was genuinely and is psychotic and bloodthirsty. And there's nothing that her and Bill won't do to grab one more dollar, or rather to steal one more dollar from people. And there's no one they won't rob blind.
Yeah. Talking about past presidents, and I don't know about you, but I feel like we've kind of seen enough of this. But if you want to talk about something on a lighter note, I remembered. I don't remember if this was at the inauguration or at the funeral, service for Jimmy Carter. In fact, I think it was at the funeral service for Jimmy Carter, because you may have noticed that Michelle Obama was not at the inauguration. She was not at the funeral either, and people wondered why that was. Well, there's been a bit of a rumor. I don't think it's very substantiated, but it's very funny, if nothing else. The rumor that Barack Obama might be having an affair with Jennifer Aniston. And
nothing surprises
Michelle's
me
not
anymore.
happy about it. I want to say, she wasn't at the funeral or the inauguration because she was on vacation in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And it's like, trying to get away from the husband, huh?
Yeah, and also shows where her priorities are, that I mean, Hillary made it.
Yeah.
She showed up.
But the funniest part was when during the again, I don't remember if it was during the funeral or the inauguration. Trump and Obama started whispering something to each other, and they were smiling and almost kind of laughing.
Oh, I believe
No
that
one
was
knows what
during
they were saying.
Carter's funeral.
Yeah, and like Kamala Harris looked over her shoulder at them, and they stopped. And as soon as she looked away, they started talking again.
Yeah, definitely got that kid in from HR vibe. It's like, you lads aren't having too much fun, I hope, because we can't have that. What a strange occurrence, I know, isn't it, Action?
The funniest meme I saw arise from that was like, imagining that, like, you know, Trump whispered to Obama, "So, Jennifer Aniston," and Obama whispered, "And people thought I was gay."
Oh, yes. I don't buy it. Obama having an affair with a woman. Yeah, no, but I mean, if we are to take it at face value and take these people at their word, it just, what I have seen, what I have heard come out of the mouth of former First Lady Obama, is that she is even more insufferable and even more of a bitch than Kamala Harris. So is it any wonder then that they sort of in public appear to have rather separate lives? And of course we're hitting now the rumor mill churning that that is exactly what is happening between former Vice President Harris and the former second gentleman Douglas Emhoff. Mr. Emhoff has apparently taken a rather cush job at a white shoe firm in New York City. Meanwhile, the former vice president is maintaining a residence somewhere in California. I want to say it's somewhere maybe in Malibu or Burbank or someplace like that. So, yeah, I mean, they're incredibly wealthy people. And so a Pacific to Atlantic flight from LA to New York is easy enough to handle, and they can probably, more than likely, they can charter a private jet to go wherever they want to. But still, it looks like separate lives being led, two different coasts of the United States. Most other people would look at that and say, "Oh, trouble in paradise." Yeah, it looks like they might be on the way to divorce.
Well, I don't know about you, but I guess I should ask, how long were you planning on this stream going?
Oh, I can go a little while longer, probably as long as necessary. These are my work from home days, so my commute is literally 10 seconds from my bed to my desk.
Because I usually stream for 3 or so hours.
Okay. We are coming up on 3 hours.
Would you like to watch something a bit lighthearted and loosely related?
Sure, why not?
Because we were talking about, we've talked about modernity and we talked a bit about modern architecture. Have you ever watched the video of JonTron's architecture tier list?
I don't think I have, no.
It's really good. I'll send you a link to it.
But I'm a bit fond of JonTron, so seems like a good bean, that one.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Okay, architecture tier list. All right, chat. We're going to switch to something a bit lighter.
It will still have some biting commentary.
Oh yes. Right, here we go.
Hey guys, it's John, and I'm just here hopping on one of these hot trends for, it gets too old. Here, I'm doing this tier list theme thing that's been going around. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it was popularized by some...
This is evergreen. It's always going to be relevant.
Well, I see the Shard.
Oh yes, the Shard in London. The tallest structure, I believe, in London. Also looks like a bloody Bond villain headquarters.
Fucking hideous.
Well, and I mean, look at the 2 pages over.
It's not the only one, of course. But it makes me think, like, they could have had in London, you could have had the Imperial Monument that got designed once, but instead you got the shard.
Yeah.
And for those of you in chat who don't know, you can look it up. I don't remember what exactly it was called, but it was a proposed monument to be built like across the street from Parliament. And it was like a monument to the Empire, and it was it would have been this gigantic tower, and it looks really cool.
Yeah, it would have been taller than, you know, even what you see with the monuments in like Trafalgar Square. Yeah, no, but it looks like he's got some good
He's got some
contenders
interesting
here.
ones. Let's do this.
Is that the one that was melting cars?
Which one?
I think they're referring to the Shard.
Oh.
That I don't know. I
Wait,
mean,
let
if
me
it were
look
the
this up.
Burj Khalifa in
London
Dubai, that would not surprise me,
Shard
considering it's the desert. It's already
melting
bloody hot out there.
Cars. I think it's true. Hang on.
Is it?
No, wait. It's not the Shard. It's called the Walkie-Talkie. What is this?
Hey.
Hang on. I need to find a picture of it. The Walkie-Talkie skyscraper melts Jaguar car parts. Oh, that's an interesting looking building. It's kind of like it's sort of rectangular, but it has a flared top.
I mean, as much as I love Jaguar, that's also not hard to do, melt some of the parts.
But yeah, light reflecting off of the building, melted cars.
Oh, dear Lord. Probably
All right,
something from the days of British Leyland. Haven't seen this one yet. This ought to be good, yeah.
YouTuber goes by the name like iDubes. You know, he did it on like fast food.
iDubes.
I'm gonna do it on something a little more relevant. Okay, I'm gonna be doing it on architecture. John's got interest, and he's gonna insert
let's
them.
go.
Okay, here we go. Spring. Oh, where'd I go? Well, I'm back now. Where do you start in a list like this? And I say nowhere better to start than the Roman Pantheon, not to be confused with the Greek Parthenon, you simple-minded freak. That was the Greeks, and that was about 500 years before that one. So I bet you feel stupid now. Greeks and Romans say, oh yeah, same time period, same people. That's you. Eras? Let's not even get into eras. Alexander the Great was in between there. You don't have to know. Do you even know what Macedonia is? You fucking losers. Build me that wall to keep out.
You don't even know what Macedonia is, bro.
Hey, look, it's the wall.
The Scots, or as we called them, the Picts.
What is
this beauty
this?
was
A
built in
wall
about
for ants.
113 AD by Roman Emperor Trajan. That was only 63 years after the founding of a little thing called London. Or as they called it then, Londinium, because the Romans did that too. You're welcome. I'm not Italian.
This is true, yes.
But you're welcome. When Nigel Chesterfield was just putting on his first fishing ship, this son of a bitch was completed. Let's go on inside.
The Pantheon,
I
look
bet
at
your
that. It's
local
so
Target
cool.
don't look like
Yes,
that.
that is... The dome is quite possibly one of the greatest architectural achievements in the history of humankind.
Yeah.
Just, you know, domes and arches. These smooth, curved structures that are just so incredibly strong that by any measure they should just cave in upon themselves, you know, just looking at it, but yet when great pressure is applied to them, they hold their shape.
To the point you can even take out the middle part.
Yeah. And get some natural light coming in.
You call them smooth and curvy. You know we like our buildings with some curves here.
Yeah. We like our buildings like we like our anime waifus with you know, some nice big booba and some thick thighs that save lives. Lux K, thank you for the follow. Simple-minded freak. That's my cousin. That's my cousin too.
Did they were like shitting in the streets at this point. This thing's got some sort of
excuse me, the Romans had plumbing.
They did. They even had rudimentary toilets.
Beautiful building, and it stands the test of time. I think that sucker's going to have to go firmly in A. So Pantheon, we're putting it in A. Beautiful. off to just an unbelievable start here. Next up, we're going to be looking at the one, the only, the Chrysler Building. Let's bring that up. Famous for standing tall above Manhattan, New York.
Classical American Art
long
Deco
and
architecture.
wide avenues and streets and shit. It's got an Art Deco style, which, in case you didn't know, was a style they used in the 1920s for about 3 or 4 times before they gave up and just put this everywhere.
Yeah.
Not only is
they
this
got
famous
modernism.
for having the name Chrysler, which may or may not have something to do with the car, I didn't look it up, but also it was famous for being the tallest building in the world in 1930.
Wait, I thought the Chrysler Building was in Chicago. No, that is in New York City.
Yeah. It's the one with the cool eagles on it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's going squarely in the D camp, because the Empire State Building beat it out a year later. Nice record. You held it for 25 minutes. Now this. Okay, now this is a building fitting of the name. Okay, it's in the name. The Empire State needs an Empire State Building. 4,000 floors of, I'm just estimating, office buildings. So I don't even know if it's occupied. Nobody knows what's in there. You just go to the deck. I don't even know why we call ourselves the Empire State. Okay, yeah, I know we're good, but, you know, Silicon Valley...
It is an actual working office building, chat, just so you know. The Art Deco style be king. As far as American architecture goes, yes.
As a proud Southerner, I will always be partial to that antebellum plantation house style. That kind of like... It's like a strange fusion of Georgian and neoclassical. I really like it.
Yes, that is also quite beautiful. It's rare, but I have seen some small towns, particularly in Texas, that I've driven through, and there's like some that will have that very southern style architecture with some of their older buildings and whatnot, and then like there's some further east in Texas you go, where Town Square courthouse building is this very interesting Art Deco type structure. Yeah. And everything else is just very small town Americana. It's an interesting dichotomy there.
Yeah, I've driven through about 100 small towns in Texas where it's exactly like that. Like you've got a whole bunch of like small 1 or 2 story buildings and this big, beautiful courthouse right in the middle.
Yeah, it's fantastic and great photo opportunities, especially if you're fond of, you know, pictures of old buildings like I am. You know, the entire state building, the Empire State Building. Though I guess, you know, sort of the same general meaning. Yes. Just been chilling with you, chatting in the background. I'm quite enjoying this, so I thought I'd drop a follow. Well, thank you, Lux. Thank you so much.
Los Angeles, they got a lot of money too. So, and that's two in one state. We just got this. And the Bronx, but we don't talk about that shit. With the Empire State Building, we got another A. All right, speaking of Silicon Valley, next up is San Francisco's very own Golden Gate Bridge. I can't. It's not gold. That would appear to be a deep red. A lot of paint necessary to do
it's
that.
rose gold.
A lot of chances to figure out your mistake. Okay,
it's the rose Golden Gate Bridge.
It's really out of my hands. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go get fucked, San Francisco.
All right, next up, Washington Monument from Washington, D.C. Yep.
It's a stick.
It's a needle.
It kind of looks like a penis.
If I shall die here today, make sure to erect me a gigantic Egyptian obelisk. For all time immemorial shall recognize my love of this penis-looking structure. Washington Monument. That's a C.
Also,
right in the middle.
Pause.
Okay, next up we got.
I don't know if you know this, but the original design for the Washington Monument was a bit crazed. Like people already think, like, why is it a giant like Egyptian style thing? What is that? Like, and you know, then people talk about, oh, did you know George Washington was a Freemason? And, like it, you know, theories abound. Yeah. But then you learn about the original design. It was going to have more to it than just the obelisk. It was going to have like a Greek style like circle of pillars at the bottom. And this big mural art, if you can believe it, mural art of George Washington dressed like an emperor surrounded by the Greek pantheon.
From what I know about George Washington, even he would have objected to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably for the best that they just rounded it off with a bunch of US flags. I mean, that works. That works. It is definitely a monument, and it is almost certainly in Washington. Yes, that much we can confirm.
So big, I had to turn it sideways. That's the Burj Khalifa from Dubai.
Tallest building in the world.
When the Dubanese aren't creating financial disasters for their investors by trying to make a map of the world in the ocean for some reason, they're making this. At 2,722 feet, this son of a gun is the biggest building in the world. Now, I know what you're thinking. That looks like the bad guy's house from Half-Life 2.
It does just a bit, doesn't it?
Welcome to City 17.
Yeah, and yet the Burj Khalifa will definitely put the City 17 Citadel to shame. I mean, they've got the world's first Giorgio Armani themed luxury hotel there, 5 stars, of course. Plenty of office space, and I think they've also got apartments and condominiums and penthouses, and I think you can even go skydiving off the top of the thing.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, which is really cool. I think first popularized by Tom Cruise in a Mission Impossible movie, and then they're just like, you have tourists like, we want to do that too, we want to do that too. And oh, all right. Yeah.
What I like in Dubai is a much smaller building by the sea that's kind of shaped like a sail. I think that's really cool.
Yes. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. I forget the name of it. It's something.
Let me look it up.
Something in an Arabian
Dubai
language that I don't remember I can pronounce.
Shaped building.
That's the Tower of Sauron.
It's the Jumeirah Burj Al Arab.
Yeah, the Burj Al Arab. Yes. No, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, it's got that really cool looking heliport that just sort of juts out a little bit on one side. Yeah, that is
it's a cool design. I like when modern buildings bother to have creative designs.
Yeah, have some flair, have some style to it.
The way I've kind of heard it explained is that like people who invest in buildings so that they can be used for something, so the space inside can be rented out, don't want to waste money on overly creative designs. And so if you want your building to actually get built, you're going to have to make some sacrifices to the design.
That's so sad.
I guess the Dubanese just have enough money to throw around that they can make the building look however they want.
Yeah, I mean, well, they go out into the desert far enough, they can dig out crude oil with a spoon. So, yeah, no, they are not hurting for money, especially if the sovereign wealth funds are any indicator. Yeah, no, they will. They're not hurting. They can have whatever they want, including luxury villas in a map shaped like the globe.
Probably right. Here's a video of a man scaling this building for no reason. Good luck with that, dude.
It's there.
I'm gonna stay right here on the ground. You wearing a Red Bull hat? I don't see any Red Bull hat. You just doing this for fun? You crazy? You out of your mind? Oh, a simple gust of wind. And that brings me to
strapped
the
in
Shard,
tight.
situated in merry old London. Ah, doesn't that just remind you of Queen Victoria, tea and biscuits? Oh, I'm sorry, did I say Queen
Crumpets,
Victoria?
you
I
Philistine.
think I meant the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, now that does look like the Eye of
Based
Sauron.
on what it is, unlike Golden Gate over there. All right, Shard, you're an E.
No, put it in
does
F.
look like
It's
a tower.
terrible. It's
This
dreadful.
modern architecture. Please take a look at. I'm not even going to call it by its name. I just refer to this thing as the Jenga building. I see it all the time, and it looks like a gigantic game of Jenga.
Yeah, seriously, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What were they even thinking when they built
It's like
this?
you actually did get some creative freedom when designing this building, and this was the best you could come up with.
Yeah, it's like, no, this is not what you want creative freedom to do. Where's the Roman columns? Where's the neoclassicism? Where's the Georgian touches and everything? Where's the Art Deco?
Nah,
That had to be a nightmare to build. Oh, I can only imagine. Lol, that's not done rendering at the top.
my Minecraft world is glitching.
Yeah, it's still loading, everyone. That's some 144p architecture. Oh, boy.
Who comes up with it? Build something nice. You see this? You see that? You
Yes,
see this
yes.
thing? That's nice. That's what a nice building looks like. You are the worst, the ugliest thing. You
F.
pollute the skyline.
F tier, please.
You're
Thank
with
you.
Golden Gate.
Thank you.
Get that son of a... All right, we're getting a little negative here. All right, I want to do something a little bit lighter in tone.
I badly want a Victorian Gothic revival in the UK. Modern is so depressing, but I guess I can dream, though. Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about a little bit earlier about a town.
Yeah.
I keep. No, it's not Poundsworth. That's a discount store in Northern Ireland.
Poundsbury.
Poundsbury, yes. Thank you. Yeah, Poundbury, and it's in Dorset. Yeah, if you want a good example of what modern urban planning could be like, take a visit to Dorset in the UK and in southwest England, and yeah. And you also have sort of the vision for what city life in Britain could be like in the eyes of the current King of England. Ideas be brewing for books. Oh? When you say Northern Ireland, I'm from Northern Ireland. Hey, small world.
So let's go for the Budapest Parliament House. Hey, okay.
Very
oh,
pretty.
Mama, how do you
yes.
say mwah in Hungarian?
Nagyon epikus.
This is the Hungarian
Epicus.
Parliament building. Okay, it is a neo-Gothic, meaning it's not actually Gothic, but it's a Gothic revival, okay? It's a revival, much like the classical revival in
Hungarian
most
Parliament
of America.
won.
This beautiful, spanning
No,
building
that is spectacular.
sits as the crown of the Danube River, which I am currently standing on and,
it's right
and now
there on the
skating
Danube.
Fuck.
Oh, you broke your green screen,
That's
man.
gonna be our first S-tier building, even though it's a bit slippery over there. S for slippery. Speaking of Parliament buildings, let's talk about the Scottish Parliament building. Wow.
Oh my god, it's
Trying to-
hideous. Oh no.
It looks like if you asked Dr. Seuss to draw a dystopia.
Yes. My Scottish ancestors would rebel again over that. This is... No, just no. Seriously, Scotland, what the actual fuck? What were you thinking?
Well,
Were you thinking at all? You probably weren't. Maybe you were drunk when you designed this, whoever it was that designed this monstrosity. This is... What is going on? I don't know, Freakman. I don't know. 10 out of 10 for the Hungarian Parliament building, definitely. Yes, action.
yeah.
It's like a dollhouse mid-assembly. Looks like charred remains of a building after a fire. Yeah. No. Knock that down and start over. No. 0 out of 10. Failing grade. Try again.
Run the government, or are you playing Gary's mod? All sorts of angles and shit stapled on top of each other. Yeah,
The funny thing is, they're not even running the government over there. I don't even know what they're doing. They just sort of gather around and, say things in a very thick Scottish brogue and, prattle on about the oppression of the English and blah, blah, blah. And then they're just like, yeah, all right, good meeting, everyone.
I guess the old Parliament building just wasn't functioning. Just
That's
looked
gorgeous.
looked crap. The best thing about this building is that it was over budget, over time, and they're thinking about demolishing it. No, I'm not kidding, by the way. For actually, the third thing is probably good news. Right here, right here.
Yes,
Below,
please.
a little bit
F
below
tier.
F, but not quite. Okay, yes.
Thank you.
That's where that belongs. Damn, we're not even halfway through. There's a lot of these left. Jeez, I think the only way to get through this on time is by doing a quick fire round. First up, St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, Russia. Very nice. I didn't know they built the Tetris building in real life. Cool. I like Tetris too.
It is
That's
the
an
building
A.
they show of Tetris, yes.
Taj Mahal,
And
one
it's
of the most
gorgeous.
stunning buildings
Very
in
colorful.
the world.
One of the
Man
seven
made it
wonders
for his
of the world.
beloved dead wife. So we're gonna put that in D and C at the same time for deceased, like his wife. JonTron, that's a
dear.
solid C. Try harder, dude. Angkor Wat, Cambodia, as in Angkor. What? Girl, this place is crazy. Put that
Very
in B for
cool.
beautiful. The Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, Spain. In Barcelona, España. This one reminds me of King.
This is, and this isn't even what it'll look like when it's completed. This has been a work in progress for over 100 years, and should be considered. I think it will be completed sometime within the next 10 to 20 years is when they will finally be able to call it completed.
Very cool looking, though.
Yeah, it is. Oh yes, it is. I don't even know what you would call this.
Well, what is it exactly?
It is quite possibly one of the largest Catholic cathedrals in the world.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because it doesn't look much like a Catholic cathedral, and that's probably from the Islamic influence. There's a lot of mosques that have been converted into churches in Spain and buildings that kind of combine the architectural styles.
This one was always a cathedral from the moment they broke ground.
Yeah, I mean, but they probably wanted it to have a distinctive Spanish-looking style that incorporated some of the historic influences.
Yeah, I don't know if they were going for a Spanish style or maybe like a French Art Nouveau sort of look. That's one thing that leaps to mind whenever I look at the Sagrada Familia. Hard to tell. There's information abounds on the place, and if you ever get a chance to go, chat, please go there. It is open to the public, even though it is all still under construction. Absolutely majestic both inside and out. And
it does look like King Triton's castle from The Little Mermaid.
It does, just a little bit, yeah. The architect was a modernist with a very specific style, Gaudi. Ah, yes.
Huh. Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
And then his successors, who were responsible for supervising it, shepherding it through the various stages of construction, they sort of added their own unique flair to it. So yeah, it is a little bit of a patchwork quilt in terms of design motifs, but still cohesive design. You can see other buildings by him in Barcelona. He liked curves and fractal ceramics and lizards and stuff. It's cooler than I'm making it sound, lol. No, but still worth a look, indeed.
Triton's Palace from The Little Mermaid. That's the one now everyone associates with seeing wieners in. So what can I say? Solid B for that one for me. That's clever. It swam like a frickin' fish. Whoa, what's that? Is that a UFO? Try again. More like an IFO. That's the Space Needle from Seattle, Washington, USA. Sad to say that's firmly on the ground, nowhere near space. Bring that sucker down to E for extraterrestrial. Got him. Next up, Museum of Pop Culture. What better way to celebrate art than by encasing it inside of gigantic metallic used tissues? Wow, I'm stunned. I'm in disbelief. I'm just straight up going to get rid of that one from the list.
Yeah, I've been there
Leaning Tower
in
of
Seattle.
Pisa?
Ugly building, cool museum inside.
Yeah, that's hideous.
Look,
I'm
Ma,
ashamed that he did. I'm disappointed he didn't include the San Jacinto monument. It's in Texas. It's a big obelisk with a big star on top.
Oh, yeah.
I'm proud of it. I like it.
Yeah, no, it's not bad.
A tourist! That's right. That tower is now heading on a ballistic missile to a hangar in Area 51. The Italian government naively allowed me to become large for this joke. Little do they know I was a spy operative. We will find out how you made this tower lean. And from the Leaning Tower of Pisa, we move on to the Pyramids of Giza. Incredible, majestic, and
Giza to
ancient.
Giza.
Very ancient, in fact. Some people estimate these are up to 4,500 years old. Some people actually think aliens put these here, which is why I say not everyone should be allowed to vote. You're telling me you came all the way through space-time and you could just muster a couple fucking rocks? Bad alien. Bad. This is for not leaving us the vaccine to the bubonic plague. Those are going in A. Great Wall of China. I mean, it's a cool wall, but I don't know about great. You can just walk around it.
It's not so great to have to scale. I have been to China. I have been to the Great Wall. That thing is a pain in the arse to climb up. Those steps are so incredibly uneven after over 1,000 years of everything shifting about.
Yeah.
At some points, you're having to pull yourself up by your own weight just to get up. It is that steep, and it is that exhausting. And it doesn't help that all of the pollution from Beijing is blowing and wafting all along the Great Wall, so your lungs just feel like they're about to cave in on themselves.
Cool thing about the Great Pyramid of Giza, the biggest one, is that for a long time people weren't sure how it was built. Like, what approach did they take when building it? And the two prevailing theories were the long ramp theory and the spiral ramp theory, that they built some sort of earthenware ramp while building it. And it would have had to have been sufficiently, not very steep. The problem with the long ramp theory is the sheer amount of building material you would have needed to make that ramp. The problem with the spiral theory, a spiral ramp that wrapped around the outside of the pyramid, is that it might have just collapsed under its own weight and just slid off of the surface of the pyramid. But an interesting new theory is that because the arrangement of the rooms inside the Great Pyramid is different from the other pyramids, it's now been suspected that they were built in a different order, because what might have happened is that they built the ramp inside the pyramid, not outside.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's possible. Yeah.
That or aliens.
Well, yeah. Insert History Channel meme here. Aliens. The Great Wall of China. Yes. No, believe me, the pollution is so bad in Beijing. It is so bad in Beijing.
Solid try, though. That's a C. Okay, we got Minecraft Buckingham Palace. I like this one because it's made of blocks. Okay, never mind on that one. Notre Dame originally. A.
Oui.
Notre Dame during its fire stage. I don't know about that one. I think that's a C.
No.
Not as good as the original. Notre Dame after fire.
Vive la France! Et vive la République!
You tried to destroy it.
Yeah, and you should see it now that it's all being restored.
Yeah, aren't they putting a roof of glass and steel on top?
Partially, I think. I don't know.
I don't like it.
There's a damn sight stronger than what they had before, and the inside
I'm
is
sure
just...
it is.
I mean, have you seen the interior now?
No, but I'm just saying I don't like the modern-looking roof.
Well, I mean, they kept it as original as possible. So I think originally they were going to turn it into like a giant phallic dildo or something like that.
Yeah, that I saw.
That did not materialize. That never
Thank
materialized, yeah. Well, they had to put something, yeah. I like to believe the ancients were smarter than we give them credit for. Maybe in some ways.
Yeah.
But you only, in the end, made it stronger. Forbidden City, Beijing, China. Wow. Very forbidden looking.
Yeah, it's not so forbidden anymore.
Pyongyang.
There's a lot of walking and a lot of very haphazardly preserved structures. It's clear that they've needed UNESCO funding to maintain things because having been there myself, the Chinese didn't do a very good job of preserving that.
You know, I just remembered something. One place I'd love to visit is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But funny thing about that is that it is jointly owned by multiple different churches from different countries. And because it's like kind of like every part of the church is jointly owned, you can't move anything in it. And so, for example, there's a ladder leaning on a wall in the church that hasn't been moved in centuries.
A church that's owned by a committee.
Exactly.
Ironically enough, that sounds like hell. Anyways, moving on.
Ice rink, North Korea. Not only did you starve your people, but you also made them think they were getting a space mountain. And when they got there, all they got was a stinking ice rink. That goes in F for feed your people, please.
Also, you know about the Pyramid
Aoyama
Hotel they built in Pyongyang?
Yes, I've seen it before. The thing also looks like a Bond villain headquarters.
Well, and it's not finished because they ran out of money.
Yeah, no, they'll never finish it. They never will. Reminds me of the stuff in Haunted Mansion, Disneyland. Granted, it's because some of the objects are cursed, but same kind of deal. Yeah.
College, Tokyo, Japan. I mean, how are they going to know you do technical work if your school doesn't look like a Mobile Suit Gundam? Just saying. That's going to go in B for the grade they most likely give you there when you did A+ work by the rest of the world's standards. Every modern apartment building.
You fools were too blind to see.
Every modern office building.
That soon we would be left with nothing but ashes.
God, no, please
You know
stop.
what this cool little town in Austria needs?
No. Kill it with fire.
Goofy's house. Goofy, I want to hang out with you. Let's hang out. You have the PS1. Mom says I can hang out at your house. My mom's a drug addict. Goofy's house rocks! Firmly.
Goofy's house rocks.
In the S rank. Now this one down here is a building that looks like an elephant. It's called the Elephant Tower in Huang Cham Phan, Khet Katuchak,
It's in Thailand.
Krung Thep Maha Nakhon 10900 Thailand. It looks kind of like an elephant.
A little
Vaguely
bit.
shaped
I mean, there's the... I guess
It's
that's
like a
the trunk?
pre-alpha build Minecraft elephant.
Yes. Very alpha. Like version 0.1. Yeah, that's not a very convincing elephant. That just looks like a gigantic M, and then they like, oh, let's put an eye here, and there's a tusk, and there's its ears.
Yay!
Womp womp.
Elephant. Now that I'm looking at it, it really looks more like just like a big M. How do you think the people in this part of the building feel when they clock in? Well, many buildings have been made before in the shape of an elephant. They've probably got the science figured out. I don't know why I should hold this particular elephant building to scrutiny. I shan't come careening out the bottom of my office block at 45 miles an hour towards the hard pavement. And my head shan't become a melon upon impact. Put it in E for elephant. I don't care. Great. We've done it. One more. The Cathedral of St. John the Divine, Manhattan, New York. It's my house. That's my house. I didn't make it up. That's my house. Ethan said so. It's on record.
Take a look at this fucking place, dude. This is where Jontron lives. Can you believe the ego in this guy? Can you believe the ego in Jontron?
John the Divine.
Like, get real, dog. Do you really think you're entitled to this?
He even came up to me, pointed a camera at my face in a restaurant, confusing the hell out of me.
God's
it's my house.
But,
Yo, John. Yo, what the fuck, dude? I went over to your house earlier today, and you were like, you didn't let me in, dude. It was fucked up.
Are you serious? Let's put this where it belongs. I didn't make the rules. This goes in Goku rank. All right? Let's get it up there. Keep on going. Yeah, there we go. Goes in Goku rank. That's how this works.
Also incredibly ironic that they are playing the coronation anthem Zadok the Priest whilst talking about an American cathedral. Which, if you know anything, that's the anthem which is played whenever a British monarch is crowned as sovereign.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. I think this is overall, like a pretty fair, well thought out list. So, you tell me what you think down in the comment section. And you can subscribe and hit the bell icon. I doubt it fucking does anything, but you can hit the bell icon. If you like what I do on this channel, please consider supporting my awesome sponsor, ExpressVPN, because without that...
all right. We're going to give that a like.
Imagining he goes like, the Alamo in San Antonio, Texas. I mean, they blew a big hole in the wall and they never fixed it.
They didn't really, no. Especially if you see what it originally looked like.
Yeah.
Not much
Well, this was a lot of fun, man.
Thanks
for having me.
It was indeed. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Please send me a copy of the VOD when you get the chance.
Absolutely. It's again, chat, I am sorry if the audio sounds a bit crunchy. I have no idea what's happened. I'm going to have to troubleshoot some things probably late tonight into tomorrow to try and get shit working again, because now everything is being routed into one fader here on my mixer, I don't know. We'll get it figured out though. Probably just have to uninstall and reinstall some things. But yeah, let's see. In the meantime, we need to find someone to raid.
If I can do a little bit of self-promo.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Go
will
ahead.
most likely be collabing with my friends Razorwind and Anatsu Shiroi tomorrow night. We'll be playing some Sea of Thieves if I can get my Xbox account working. And then I'll probably post in my schedule for next week on Saturday or Sunday. I've been playing the original Half-Life lately, so I'll probably get back to that. And I usually do a movie night once a week. Sometimes I do a stream where I watch cringe videos with my friend Antilia, and I've been meaning to get into Marvel Rivals, so I'll probably do that too.
Absolutely.
And yeah, once again, thanks for having me. It looks like Razorwind is streaming. Shiroi's streaming.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. A lot of people streaming tonight. It is a busy night. But someone we have not raided in a long time over on this channel. Somebody who has been enjoying Sea of Thieves as of late and is now perfect for Throwback Thursday. Let's go raid Skullermance. He's playing Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver Remastered.
Nice.
Let's get that set up. And copy pasta is there. Alright, we're going to do that. I will see all of you tomorrow night for more Stardew Valley with Royal Rampage. Until then, that's ElijahKnightly. I'm Lord Rexworth. We wish you all the best, and God bless.
See you later.
Thank you.